Victoria Sterling ripped the key out of her hand, walked 11 steps across her own showroom floor and threw it hard so it skidded past a man's work boots and slid under a $400,000 Ferrari. "There," she said. "That's what your money buys. Go get it." 40 people went silent. His 9-year-old daughter was standing right beside him. Marcus Hayes didn't raise his voice. He knelt down, picked up that key, stood back up, and said 6 words that would cost Victoria Sterling $10 million. 14 days later, she heard them again in a room full of collectors with an auction hammer coming down. Stay to the end of this one, and drop your city in the comments so I can see how far this story travels. Subscribe if you've ever been judged before anybody bothered to ask your name. The key was still spinning on the marble when Ava reached for her father's sleeve. "Dad, it's okay, baby." "Dad, she threw it." "I know." Marcus Hayes was 51 years old. He had a bad left knee from a jack that slipped in 2009, and getting down onto marble was not a thing his body enjoyed. He got down anyway, slow, one hand on the floor. He reached under the front bumper of a Ferrari he would never own, closed his fingers around the key, and came back up without hurrying, because hurrying was what she wanted. He looked at Victoria Sterling and he said it. "You'll want this back someday." 6 words. She laughed, actually laughed out loud in front of her staff. "Sir," she said, "I have 400 keys. Not this one." That was the moment. If you had walked into Sterling Elite Motors at 2:41 that Tuesday afternoon, you would have seen a woman in a $9,000 suit smiling at a mechanic in a canvas jacket, and you would have said the woman won. She didn't. She just didn't know it yet. But we have to back up, because to understand why Marcus Hayes stayed calm on that marble floor, you have to understand what happened to him 3 days earlier on Route 9 at 6:15 in the morning with his daughter in the passenger seat. The truck was a 1994 Ford. Marcus had owned it since it was 7 years old. He had rebuilt the carburetor twice, replaced the water pump 3 times, and welded the bed rail himself the winter Ava was born. He knew that truck better than most men know their own hands, which is why when the steering went soft on the on-ramp, he knew exactly what it was before the wheel had finished turning. "Ava, hold the door handle." "What's happening?" "Hold the handle, baby. Both hands." The truck drifted left. A semi was in that lane. Marcus felt the front end go loose and dead under him, and he did the only thing there was to do. He pulled the wheel hard the other way and let the truck ride the shoulder gravel, and the semi went by close enough that the sound of it filled the whole cab. Then they were stopped. Sideways, half in the weeds. Ava was breathing fast. "Are we okay?" "We're okay." "Dad, are we okay?" "Look at me." He turned in the seat. "Look at my face. Am I scared?" She looked. His face was completely still. It was the face he used at the shop when a customer's brake line let go in his hands. "No," she said. "Then we're okay." He got out. He walked around the front. He crouched down and looked at the tie rod end and saw the boot torn open and the joint separated, and he understood that if it had gone 40 seconds earlier, it would have gone at 70 miles an hour in the middle lane. He stayed down there a while, longer than he needed to. When he stood up, his hands were shaking. He put them in his pockets before he turned around. "Well," he said, "that's the end of the Ford. Can you fix it?" "I can fix it." "So why is it the end?" Marcus looked at his daughter through the windshield. 9 years old. Hair in 2 braids because he'd finally learned how after 4 years of doing it badly. "Because can I fix it and should you be riding in it are 2 different questions," he said. "And I've been answering the wrong one for about 2 years. Ray Delgado had known Marcus for 19 years. He ran the shop next door, and he was the closest thing Marcus had to a brother. "So sell it," Ray said. "It's worth $900. "So sell it and add what you've got." "What I've got is $11,400, and 8 of that is Ava's." "Ava's what?" "Ava's college, or Ava's braces, or Ava's whatever comes at me sideways next year." Marcus wiped his hands. "I'm not touching it." "Then you've got $3,400 to buy a car." $3,400, Ray whistled. "That buys you somebody else's problem, brother." "Somebody else's problem is fine. I fix problems." Marcus pulled a rag through his fingers. "What I can't fix is a frame that's been in a wreck and hidden. That's the one that scares me. I need to see the car myself. I need to put my hands on it." "So go to an auction." "Auctions are cash on the spot and no crawling underneath." "Then where?" Marcus was quiet. "There's a place out on Coldwater," he said finally. "Sterling Elite. Ray stared at him. The Lamborghini place. They take trades, big trades. And when a guy trades in his wife's old Volvo against a Bentley, they don't want the Volvo. It goes to the back lot and it sits there and it costs them money every day. And you think they'll sell you one? I think somebody back there wants that lot cleared. Ray shook his head slowly. Marcus, look at yourself. I'm looking. You know what I mean? I know exactly what you mean. Marcus hung the rag on the bench. And I've got a 9-year-old who almost got hit by a truck 3 days ago, so I'll take the look. He wore his good jacket. That was the thing that got Ray later, years later, telling the story to people who didn't believe it. Marcus wore his good jacket. It was canvas. It was clean. It had been washed the night before, and it still had a shadow on the left cuff where a fuel line had let go in 2016 and never fully come out. He'd tried. That was the part nobody saw. He'd stood at the sink for 20 minutes with a brush. Do I look okay? Ava asked in the parking lot. You look perfect. Do you look okay? Marcus laughed. Ask me in an hour. The doors were glass, and they were heavy, and they opened onto a floor so polished that Ava stopped walking to look at her own reflection. Don't touch anything, Marcus said. I know. Hands where I can see them, and if somebody talks to you, yes sir, no sir, and let my dad answer. I know, Dad. There were 3 salespeople standing at a counter shaped like a boomerang. All 3 of them saw Marcus come in. Marcus watched all 3 of them see him, and then all 3 of them found something else to look at. He stood there for 4 minutes. He knew it was 4 minutes because there was a clock on the wall shaped like a piston, and he watched it. Then he walked to the counter. Afternoon, he said. The one on the left looked up. Young guy. Trevor, according to the badge. Suit that fit him well. Hi there. Are you here for service? Service is around the side. I'm here to buy a car. There was a pause of about half a second. Marcus had heard that pause his entire adult life. It had a texture to it. Sure, Trevor said. Absolutely. What are we looking at today? Something used, something safe, under $3,500. Trevor's eyebrows went up before he could stop them. Under $3,500 what? Dollars. Sir. Trevor glanced at the other 2. One of them was already turning away with her hand over her mouth. Sir, our entry-level pre-owned inventory starts at around $62,000. I understand that. So I'm not sure. I'm not asking about your inventory, Marcus said. I'm asking about your back lot. Trevor blinked. Our what? The lot behind the service bays. Trade-ins you don't retail. Cars that came in on a deal and never got fixed up. You've got about 40 of them out there. I saw them from the road. Trevor's mouth opened and stayed open for a second. Those aren't for sale. Everything's for sale, Marcus said. That's not an insult. It's just how a business works. Every one of those cars is costing you insurance and floor space. Somebody in this building has a spreadsheet with those cars on it, and that person is not happy. Trevor looked at him differently for a second, the first honest look Marcus had gotten since he'd walked in. Who are you? I'm a mechanic, 31 years. And you want to buy a beater off our back lot. I want to buy a safe car off your back lot, Marcus said, and I'd like to put it on a lift before I do. Trevor almost smiled. You know that's not the craziest thing anybody's asked me today. Then what's the problem? The problem, said a voice behind them, is that this isn't a junkyard. Marcus turned around. Victoria Sterling was 42 years old, and she had built Sterling Elite Motors from 1 location into 11. She had been on the cover of 2 magazines. She had a photograph of herself shaking hands with a governor hanging in her own showroom, which was a thing Marcus noticed and filed away, because in his experience the people who hang photos of themselves are telling you something about what they're afraid of. She had come down off the mezzanine. She was still holding a phone. Ms. Sterling, Trevor said. This gentleman was asking about. I heard what he was asking about. She looked at Marcus, then at his boots, then at Ava, then back at Marcus. The whole scan took about a second and a half. Sir, she said, I think there's been a misunderstanding about what kind of business this is. I don't think there has. We sell Aston Martins. We sell Ferraris. We sold a McLaren on Friday to a man who paid for it out of a personal account. She smiled. Are you looking for our budget section? You don't have a budget section. No, she said. We don't. Then I'm looking for a reliable car. A reliable car is one thing. Victoria's smile didn't move. This is a luxury dealership. I understood that when I read the sign. Somebody by the counter made a sound. Victoria's chin lifted about a quarter inch. "What exactly do you do?" she asked. "I'm a mechanic. For a shop. For myself. Small garage on Dunbar." "Dunbar." She said the street name the way you'd hold something with 2 fingers. "And how did you plan on paying?" "Cash. Cash." Now the smile got wider. "How much cash?" Marcus felt Ava's hand find the back of his jacket. He could have walked out. He thought about it. He thought about it for exactly as long as it took to remember the sound of that semi going past the driver's window. $3,400, he said. The showroom heard it. All of it. $3,400, Victoria repeated. That's right. In a building where the floor cost $200,000. The floor's nice, Marcus said. The grout's cracking by the second column, though. Somebody laid it over a slab that wasn't cured. Victoria's smile finally moved. Just a little. Just at one corner. Excuse me. I'm just saying you paid $200,000 and somebody rushed you. It happens. He shrugged. I'm not trying to be smart. You asked about the floor. For about 3 seconds, nobody in Sterling Elite Motors said anything at all. Then Victoria Sterling made the decision that ended her career as she knew it. She could have had him escorted out. She could have told Trevor to handle it. She could have said no and gone back upstairs and never thought about the man in the canvas jacket again. Instead, she decided to teach him something. You know what, she said. Come with me. Ms. Sterling, Trevor started. Trevor, get the gate. I don't think... You don't have to. She was already walking. Marcus stood there a second. Dad, Ava whispered. Stay right next to me. Are we in trouble? No, baby. We're just going to look at a car. They went out through the service corridor and past the bays where 4 technicians in matching gray uniforms stopped what they were doing to watch the parade go by. Marcus noticed a lift with a Vantage on it, and the tech underneath had the belly pan half off and had cross-threaded a fastener, and Marcus's hand actually twitched, because 31 years does that to you. Then the roll gate came up, and they were on the back lot. Victoria turned around with her arms out. There you go, she said. Your budget section. It was 5 rows of cars nobody wanted, sedans with faded clear coat, an SUV with a tarp over the sunroof, 2 minivans, a convertible with a mouse nest in the grill, and at the very end of the last row, backed into the fence under a maple tree that had been dropping on it for 9 years, there was something silver. Marcus stopped walking. Victoria noticed. Oh, she said. You like that one. What is it? It's garbage. That's not what I asked. She started toward it, and Marcus followed, and the whole time he was doing the thing he'd been doing since he was 19 years old, which was reading a car the way other people read a face. The stance was wrong. Not sagging wrong, low wrong. The wheel arches didn't match anything he'd ever seen on a lot. The windshield had a crack running corner to corner, and the glass at the base of it had a curve in it that no production car had any business having. This, Victoria announced, is a dead Aston Martin. Somebody had followed them out. 2 of the salespeople from the counter and a young guy from the detail bay with his phone already up. Dead, Marcus said. Completely. It came in 9 years ago on a trade. Estate deal, old man died, family dumped everything, we took the whole collection to get the DB5. This thing was in the back of the garage under a sheet. Victoria knocked on the roof with her knuckle. Engine seized, wirings cut, title's a mess. 2 different shops looked at it and told us it wasn't worth the transport to scrap it. 2 shops. 2 very good shops. Marcus walked around the front of it, slowly. So why's it still here? Victoria's head tilted. What? You said it's not worth scrapping. Scrap's free. They come get it. He looked up at her. 9 years is a long time to keep something you're not keeping. It's a lot, not a museum. Things sit. Sure. He kept walking. Sure. He crouched at the front wheel. The knee complained. He ignored it. And that was when Marcus Hayes stopped breathing for about 2 seconds, because the brake caliper had 6 pistons and a casting mark he had never seen on any road car in his life, and behind it where the rotor should have been vented in a standard pattern. It wasn't. He stood up like nothing had happened. How much? He said. Victoria laughed, not politely. She laughed the way you laugh at a dog doing something clever. You want to buy this? I asked how much. Sir, you have $3,400. I do. You have $3,400 and you want to buy a car that will never run again, that has no keys, no title in hand, no engine compression, and no value. She turned to the salespeople. Am I being unkind? I don't think I'm being unkind. I think I'm being honest. You're being honest, one of them said. The kid from the detail bay was still filming. "You know what the honest thing is," Victoria said. "The honest thing is this. Some people come in here and they see a life they want. And that's fine. That's human. But there's a difference between wanting something and being ready for it, and the kindest thing I can do, the kindest thing, ma'am, is to be clear with you. Ma'am." She stopped. "My daughter is standing right here," Marcus said quietly. "So whatever you're building up to, you can say it to me at the fence, but not in front of her." The lot got very quiet. Victoria looked at Ava for the first time as an actual person. Ava looked back at her and did not look away, and that was Ava's whole personality in one moment. "I'm not saying anything cruel," Victoria said. "You've said 6 things. I've said, you asked if I wanted the budget section. You said this is a luxury dealership. You said the floor cost more than my life. You called this car garbage twice, and you just told a room full of your employees that I'm a man who walked in here wanting a life I can't have." Marcus's voice never went up, not once. "That's 6. I counted. I've had a lot of practice counting." Victoria's jaw moved. Behind her, Trevor was looking at the ground. "Give me a price," Marcus said. "It's not for—" "Give me a price and I'll leave. That's the whole transaction. You'll never see me again, and you'll tell this story at dinner and everybody will laugh, and that's fine. I've been the story at somebody's dinner before." He put a hand on Ava's shoulder. "But give me a price." And Victoria Sterling, because she was angry now, and because 40 years of always winning had taught her that the fastest way to end a fight is to make the other person's victory worthless, said, $2,800. Trevor's head came up. "Ms. Sterling, 2,800 as is where is no warranty, no inspection, no returns, and you tow it out of here today." She folded her arms. "Cash." "Ms. Sterling, we can't sell without a—" "We have the title Trevor. It's in the estate file. It's been in the estate file for 9 years. She never took her eyes off Marcus. "Well, you said 3,400. Here's a car for 28. That's a bargain, isn't it? You'll have 600 left over for the tow truck." "Dad," Ava said. "1 second, baby. Dad, look." Ava had walked up to the front of the car while they were talking. She had her hand flat on the hood in the dust, and she had drawn a line through it with her thumb, and underneath the gray, there was silver. Real silver, deep, the kind of paint that looks like water. "Dad, I think it's beautiful." Marcus looked at his daughter. Then he looked at the car. Then he looked at the woman who had thrown a key across a marble floor. "I'll take it," he said. They went back inside to do the paperwork, and that was where it got worse because Victoria Sterling had decided to make a lesson out of the whole afternoon. She did the deal herself, at the front desk, in the middle of the showroom, with customers walking through. "Cash," she said, holding out her hand. Marcus took the envelope out of his inside pocket. It was a bank envelope. He had gone to the credit union that morning and asked for it in hundreds because he thought hundreds would be less embarrassing. "Count it out, please," Victoria said, "on the counter, so there's no dispute." "There won't be a dispute. Count it." So he counted it, $2,800 in $100 bills one at a time onto a marble counter, while a woman in a suit watched, and 3 employees pretended to be busy, and a kid in the corner filmed it with a phone. It took 40 seconds. It was the longest 40 seconds of Marcus Hayes' adult life, and it wasn't close. 600 left, Victoria observed. "Yes, ma'am." "For the tow." "Yes, ma'am." She slid a document across the counter. "Read this." He read it, all of it. Every line. He took his glasses out of his shirt pocket and put them on, and he read the entire thing while she stood there, and after 90 seconds she said, "It's standard," and he said, "Then it won't mind being read," and she stopped talking. It was a bill of sale, as is, no warranties express or implied. Buyer acknowledges the vehicle is sold in non-operational condition. Buyer waives all claims arising from condition provenance or valuation. And there was one clause more, which Victoria had added herself in a mood. Seller makes no representation as to the vehicle's identity model designation year or history. Buyer accepts full and final ownership of the vehicle and any and all contents, components, and documentation contained therein. Marcus read that clause twice. Then he read it a third time. "You wrote this yourself," he said. "I did. Just now. 10 minutes ago," she smiled. "I wanted to be thorough, so that later when it doesn't run and you're upset and you'd like to come back and tell me I took advantage of you, this will be here. Any and all contents, components, and documentation contained therein," Marcus read out loud. "That's right. So whatever's in it is mine. Sir, there's nothing in it but mouse droppings." but whatever's in it is mine. Victoria's smile flickered the second time that day, and this time she felt it. Yes, she said, whatever's in it is yours. Marcus took the pen out of her hand. He signed it. Then he did something that Trevor Ames would describe under oath 14 days later in a room with a court reporter in it. I took out his phone, laid it flat on the counter, and photographed every page of the contract, including the signature line, including her initials, including the timestamp on the printout. "What are you doing?" Victoria said. "Keeping a copy." "You get a copy, it prints." "I know," Marcus said. "I'm keeping two." The kid from the detail bay put the video online that night. He called it "Guy Tries to Buy a Lambo with 34. It wasn't accurate. It wasn't close to accurate. Marcus never touched a Lamborghini and never said the word. But accuracy is not what the internet is for, and by Thursday it had 400,000 views, and by Saturday it had 2 million. Marcus didn't know. Marcus didn't have that kind of phone. But the neighborhood knew. "Marcus." Ray was standing in the driveway with his hands on his head. "Marcus, they towed it here. It's here." "I know it's here. I paid for the tow." "You spent your girl's car money." "I spent my money. Ava's money is where Ava's money is." "You spent all your money on a dead Aston Martin." Ray pointed at it. Brother, look at me. That thing does not have an engine that turns." "No. You know it doesn't turn." "I know." "So why?" Marcus stood in his own driveway in the dark, looking at a silver shape under a tarp, and he didn't answer for a long time. "Ray," he said, "how long have you known me?" 19 years. "You ever known me to be sentimental about a car?" "No." "You ever known me to be stupid about money?" "No." "Then sit down for a second." Ray sat on the tailgate of his own truck. "The brake caliper on that car," Marcus said, "has 6 pistons and a casting mark I don't recognize. So it's aftermarket." "It's not aftermarket. The mounting bracket is cast into the upright. That's not something you bolt on. That's something a factory does when a factory is building one of something." Ray was quiet. "The windshield's got a compound curve at the base," Marcus went on. "I've never seen it. Not on a DB, not on a Vantage, not on a Vanquish. And the panel gaps—" He stopped. "Ray, the panel gaps are hand gaps. They're beautiful and they're not identical. Left to right, they're off by a hair, and that hair is the same hair all the way down. That's a man with a file. That's not a robot." "Marcus." "And she told me 2 shops looked at it and said it wasn't worth scrapping." Marcus finally turned around. "Ray, nothing is not worth scrapping. Scrap is free. Somebody comes and takes it and pays you for the aluminum. There is no such thing as a car you can't get rid of." "So what are you saying?" "I'm saying somebody looked at that car 9 years ago," Marcus said, "and told Sterling Motors it was worthless. And then that car sat in the very back corner of a lot under a tree where nobody would ever look at it again. For 9 years. Ray stared at him. "And I'm saying," Marcus said, "that's not what worthless looks like. That's what hidden looks like." He worked on it that night after Ava went to bed. Not on the engine. He didn't touch the engine. He wasn't ready for the engine. He got a drop light and a floor creeper, and he went underneath, and he lay there on his back in his own garage at 11:40 at night, and he ran his fingertips along the floor pan the way a doctor runs a hand along a rib. It wasn't stamped steel. He tapped it. He tapped it again in a different place. He got out from under the car, got a magnet off the toolbox, went back under and put the magnet against the floor. It fell off. Marcus lay there in the dark holding a magnet that would not stick to the bottom of a car, and he said out loud to nobody, "Oh." Then he went to the front of the car and opened the driver's door. It opened. It had never been locked 9 years, and nobody had even locked it, and he sat down inside for the first time. The seat wasn't a seat. It was a shell with a pad in it. There was no radio. There was a blank plate where a radio goes. There was no cup holder. There was no vanity mirror. There was a switch on the console that was not labeled, and a second switch beside it that was not labeled either, and a gauge in the middle of the cluster that Marcus had never seen in a road car in 31 years of putting his head under dashboards. He sat there with his hands on the wheel. And then he reached up under the dash, the way he had reached up under 10,000 dashes, feeling for the wiring harness because he wanted to see where they'd cut it. His hand found something flat, not a connector, not a bracket, flat, metal, riveted up under the cowl where no one would ever put their hand unless they were a mechanic looking for a harness at midnight. He got the drop light and put his cheek against the seat and shone it up. There was a plate up there, aluminum. about 2 inches by 4. It had been riveted, not glued, and it had been painted over in the same silver as the body, and then somebody had scratched at the paint years ago, judging by the oxidation in the scratches, like they'd been trying to read it and given up. Marcus could read it. There was a stamped code, 12 characters, and the first 3 were letters, and the last was a slash and a number. Why? He looked at it for a long, long time. Because Marcus Hayes had spent 31 years around cars, and he'd read every magazine and every forum and every out-of-print factory manual he could get his hands on, and he had once driven 4 hours to a swap meet in Ohio just to look at an engine block he would never own. And he knew what a /1 meant. /1 meant there was supposed to be a /2. /1 meant somebody built a series and numbered it, and this was the first. Marcus climbed out of the car very carefully, like the car might notice. He stood in his garage at 12:20 in the morning with grease on his hands and a drop light swinging on its hook. Then he went inside, sat down at the kitchen table, and opened the laptop Ava used for school. He typed in the 12 characters exactly as they were stamped. Nothing came back. Nothing at all. He tried the first 3 letters and the /1. Nothing. He sat back. And then, because he was a man who had spent his life diagnosing things that other people had given up on, he did what he always did when the obvious approach failed. He stopped asking what the answer was and started asking who would know. He went to the shelf in the hall. He got down a book he'd bought at an estate sale in 2011 for $4, a history of British prototype and competition cars, hardback water-stained on the corner. He turned to the index. He found a name, an automotive historian, cited 11 times. The book was from 1998. The man might be dead. Marcus wrote the name on the back of a receipt anyway, and underneath it he wrote the 12 characters, and under that he wrote one more line and he underlined it twice. Why would you cut the wires on a car you were going to scrap? He turned off the kitchen light. Down the hall, Ava's door was open, the way she liked it. He stood there a second, the way fathers do. Dad. Go back to sleep, baby. Is the car okay? Marcus Hayes stood in the dark hallway of a small house on Dunbar Street, 7 hours after a billionaire threw a key at his feet in front of 40 people, and he thought about how to answer that. The car's fine, he said. The car's been fine the whole time. Then why was it in the back? That's a real good question, sweetheart. He pulled her door to its usual 3 inches. That's the question, he said. The magnet was still sitting on the workbench at 5:40 in the morning when Marcus came back out to the garage because he had not slept, and a man who has not slept eventually stops pretending and puts his boots on. He didn't turn on the overhead. He used the drop light. He got the creeper and went under the front of the car again and lay there looking up at a floor pan that a magnet would not stick to, and he ran his thumbnail along a seam where 2 panels met. Hand welded, he said out loud. Somebody welded you by hand. He came out from under and sat on the creeper with his forearms on his knees. Then he got up and started on the wiring because the wiring was the thing that had been bothering him since the lot. It took him 40 minutes to trace it, and when he was done, he sat back on the wheel well and looked at what he'd found with something close to anger. Somebody had cut the harness in 11 places. Not 1, 11, and not with a torch, and not with a dull pair of dikes in a hurry. Each cut was clean, each cut was at a service loop where the wire had slack, and each cut had been taped off individually, so no bare copper touched the ground. You do not do that to a car you are destroying. You do that to a car you intend to put back together someday. Ray came up the driveway at 7 with 2 coffees, and Marcus was still sitting there. Tell me you slept. I slept some. You're a liar, and you've always been a liar. Ray handed him the cup. You need to see something. I need to show you something first. Marcus, look at this. Marcus held up the harness end taped coiled neat as a surgeon's stitch. Now look at this one, and this one. 11 of them, Ray. 11 cuts, every one of them taped. Ray held the wires and turned them over in his fingers, and Ray had been a mechanic for 26 years, and his face changed. That's careful. That's loving. Somebody didn't want it running. Somebody didn't want it running yet, Marcus said. There's a difference, and it's the whole difference. Ray handed the wires back and stood there a second and then said, Okay, my turn. Where's your phone? In the kitchen. Get it. Ray. Go get it, brother. Marcus went and got it. Ray took it out of his hand, typed something, and turned the screen around. It was Marcus. It was Marcus at a marble counter counting $100 bills one at a time with his glasses on. Somebody had put a sad little piano track underneath it. The title said, "Guy tries to buy a Lambo with $34. Under it in gray letters it said 2.4 M views. Marcus looked at it for a while. "That's not what happened," he said. "I know that's not what happened. I never said the word Lamborghini in my life. I know. They filmed my daughter." Ray was quiet. Her back's to it. You can't see her face. "They filmed my daughter, Ray." And that was the only moment in 14 days that Marcus Hayes actually lost his temper. Not on the marble floor, not in front of 40 people, not at the fence. In his own driveway at 7 in the morning holding a phone. He set it down on the bench very carefully because he did not trust his hand. "Okay," he said. "Okay. Okay." He picked the coffee back up. "It doesn't change anything. The car is still the car. People are saying things about you, man. People have been saying things about me since I was 15. They're saying it loud this time. Then it'll be loud." Marcus took a drink. "Ray, I've got a piece of aluminum riveted under that cowl with a code on it and a /1 at the end. I've got a floor pan that's not steel. I've got hand gaps and a caliper with 6 pistons and 11 wires cut like a surgeon did it. You want me to worry about a video?" Ray looked at him a long moment. "No," he said. "I guess I want you to be right." "So do I." Ava came out at 7:40 with her backpack, and she stopped on the step and looked at the tarp, which was folded back now, so the front of the car showed. "You uncovered it." "I did. It looks better in the daytime." "It does." She came down and put her hand on the fender and then pulled it back and wiped her palm on her jeans, which made Ray laugh. "Dad, Kayla's brother saw a video." Marcus set the cup down. "Did he?" "He said you tried to buy a Lamborghini with $34. She said it flatly, the way a 9-year-old says a thing she has already decided about. I told him that's not what happened. I was there, and it was $3,400, and it was an Aston Martin, and he said that's even worse." "What did you say?" "I said his brother's car has a check engine light, and my dad could fix it in 9 minutes. Ray put his hand over his mouth. Marcus crouched down in front of her, which his knee did not appreciate. "Ava." "What? You don't have to defend me." "I know. I'm serious, baby. Not at school, not on the bus, not to Kayla's brother. It's not your job." "But it's not true. A lot of things aren't true. So we just let people say it." Marcus took a second with that one because it was a real question, and she deserved a real answer. "No," he said. "We let people say it, and then we go do the work, and one day the work says it back for us. That's how it goes. It's slower. It's better." Ava thought about that. How long is one day? Sometimes a long time. How long for this? And Marcus Hayes, who did not lie to his daughter, said, "I don't know." She adjusted her backpack straps. "I still think it's beautiful," she said, and went to the bus. By 9 o'clock, he had a name and no phone number. The book from the estate sale gave him Walter Bishop, cited 11 times, described in the acknowledgments as a Mark historian and archivist. Marcus called the publisher, which was gone. He called the university listed under Bishop's name, and a woman transferred him twice, and then told him that department had been dissolved in 2009. "Ma'am, is there anybody who'd know where he went?" "I really couldn't say." "Is there a records office?" "Sir, I've transferred you twice." "I understand. I appreciate it. Can you transfer me one more time?" There was a pause on the line, and then something in her voice changed the way it does when somebody decides you're not going to be a problem after all. "Hold on," she said. 20 minutes later, he had an emeritus listing and a landline in Pennsylvania, and a woman answered who was not Walter Bishop. "He's 91, she said. "I'm his daughter. Can I ask what this is regarding?" "Ma'am, my name is Marcus Hayes. I'm a mechanic in... We don't do appraisals." "I'm not asking for an appraisal. Everybody says that." "I've got a chassis plate," Marcus said, "riveted under a cowl painted over in body color with 12 characters and a /1, and I can't find the code anywhere, and I think somebody cut 11 wires on this car very carefully 9 years ago so that it wouldn't run and wouldn't burn." The line went quiet. "Say that again," she said. "Which part?" "The /1 part. /1, stamped, last character." He heard her put the phone against something. He heard her voice muffled, and then a man's voice thin and far away and immediately loud. Then the man had the phone. "Read it to me," Walter Bishop said. Sir, don't sir me. I'm 91, read it to me. Character by character, don't guess. If you can't see it, say you can't see it. Marcus had it written on the back of a receipt in his shirt pocket. He read it out one character at a time, and when he got to the slash, he said slash, and when he got to the last one, he said 1. There was no sound on the other end at all. Sir, where are you in Ohio? Where in Ohio? Just outside. Never mind, don't tell me on the phone. Bishop's voice had gone somewhere else entirely. Mr. Hayes, is the car aluminum? The floor is. Magnet won't hold. Is it a monocoque or does it have a tube frame? I haven't had it up on a lift. From underneath it looks like a tube structure with panels riveted to it in the sills. Does it have a fuel filler on both sides or one? Marcus stopped. One, left. Is there a switch on the console that isn't labeled? Marcus's hand went flat on the workbench. There's 2. Walter Bishop made a sound. It was not a word. His daughter said something in the background and he told her to be quiet, and then he came back on, and his voice was completely different, quiet and old and careful. Mr. Hayes, I want you to listen to me. That car should not exist. What does that mean? It means what I said. It means I have spent 30 years telling people that car was destroyed, and I have been wrong for 30 years, or you are wrong right now, and one of us is going to find out which today. A breath. How did you come to have it? I bought it. From whom? A dealership, Sterling Elite Motors. How much did you pay? Marcus looked at the ceiling. $2,800, he said. There was a very long silence on the line. Say that once more, Walter Bishop said. $2,800, cash, as is. Do you have a bill of sale? I do. Is it signed by the owner of the company, herself? Do you have photographs of the document? I've got photographs of every page. Mr. Hayes. Bishop's voice sharpened up like a man 20 years younger. Do not tell anybody what that plate says. Not your friends, not your neighbors, not a forum, not a magazine, not the man who sells you parts. Do you understand me? I understand you. Send me photographs, the plate, the upright, the sills, the underside of the rear deck up in the corner where the panel turns. There should be a chalk mark up there, a number in wax pencil if nobody's ever repainted the underside. A chalk mark. They chalked them at the shop. It was a Tuesday thing. Send me photographs and don't send them to anybody else. Mr. Bishop. Marcus put his hand on the bench again. Before you hang up, if this is what you think it is, what is it? And Walter Bishop said, it's the reason a man in England lost his job in 1966. Then he hung up. Marcus stood in his garage holding a dead phone and looked at the silver car for about a minute and a half without moving. Then he went and got the camera. 6 miles away, in an office with a photograph of a governor in the hall outside Victoria Sterling, was in a good mood for approximately 4 hours. The video was doing 11,000 views an hour. 2 automotive blogs had picked it up. Her marketing director had put a note on her desk that said, engagement up 400%, mostly negative, but recognition is recognition. And Victoria had circled, recognition is recognition, and written exactly next to it. At 11:20, Dale Whitmer came in without knocking, which he had earned in 14 years as her chief financial officer. You need to see the comments. I've seen them. You've seen the ones under the video. He put his tablet down in front of her. These are on our Google listing. 406 reviews since yesterday. We had a 4.8. We have a 2.1. Victoria didn't look at the tablet. It'll pass. Sun Valley Wealth Management called. Now she looked. Called about what? They have 11 executive leases with us. They're reviewing the relationship. Dale sat down. Victoria, that's $490,000 a year in a phone call that took 90 seconds. Because of a video. Because of a video where you made a man count cash on a counter. He offered cash. He offered an envelope. You told him to count it out loud in the middle of the showroom. Dale said it without heat, which was worse. I've worked for you since you had one building. I'm going to say the thing nobody else in here is going to say, and then I'm going to go back to work. That wasn't business. That was something else, and you know it was, and about 2 million people can tell. Victoria's jaw set. Anything else? Yes. Dale stood up. Trevor Ames wants to talk to you. About, he didn't say, but he's been standing outside your door for 10 minutes, and he's 26 years old, so whatever it is, it took everything he's got. Trevor came in with his hands behind his back like a kid at an assembly. Ms. Sterling. Trevor. I want to say something and I'd like to keep my job. Then say the second part first next time. She waved at the chair. Go ahead. He didn't sit. When he asked about the back lot, he was right, Trevor said. About all of it. The insurance, the floor space, the spreadsheet. There is a spreadsheet. I make it. I've been asking about that lot for 2 years. And I looked up the estate file last night. The Coleridge estate, 2016. Victoria went still. Why? Because I wanted to make sure the title was clean, because if it wasn't, and that man's kid gets hurt in a car we sold, that's on us. Trevor swallowed. It's clean, it's fine, but that's not what I want to tell you. Then tell me. 9 cars came in on that estate. 8 of them got inventoried, photographed, appraised, and retailed within 4 months. Every single one. Trevor took a folded page out of his jacket. The 9th one got a condition report on the same day it arrived. 1 page, no photographs. Total loss, non-salvageable, recommend hold for disposal. Signed off before the transport driver had even finished unloading. That's not unusual. It's signed by Gil. Victoria did not say anything. And Gil's the one who told you to leave it in the corner, Trevor said. You told me that yourself my first month. You said Marchetti says don't bother with the silver one, so we don't bother with the silver one. Gil Marchetti has been in this business for 35 years. Yes, ma'am. He built my acquisitions department. Yes, ma'am. So what exactly are you saying to me, Trevor? Trevor Ames, 26 years old, put the folded page on her desk. I'm saying that man asked you why it was still there, he said, and you didn't have an answer, and I've been up all night, and neither do I. He left. Victoria sat there for a while, then she pressed the intercom. Get me Gil. He's in Scottsdale until Thursday. I know where he is. Get him. Marcus sent Walter Bishop 41 photographs at 2:15 in the afternoon. The chalk mark was there. Up under the rear deck in the corner where the panel turned faint as breath, a wax pencil number that had survived 60 years because nobody had ever had a reason to clean it. Bishop called at 1:04 in the morning. You're awake, he said. I'm awake. I've been sitting here since 6. Yes, sir. Mr. Hayes, I want to explain something to you, and I want you to not talk while I do it, because I'm 91, and I lose my place. A breath. In 1965 and 1966, a small group of men built a series of cars that were never meant to be sold. Development cars, test beds. They were numbered as a series, /1/2/3. Do you follow? I follow. /1 was the first. It was the one they built by hand while they were still arguing about what it was going to be. Every other car in the series was built to match it. Every drawing that came after came from it. Bishop's voice was steady and old. When the program ended, the company was in trouble, real trouble, the kind where men come and count your desks, and the order came down to destroy the development cars. There's a memo. I've held the memo in my hands. /2 through /5 were cut up. There are photographs of the cutting. And /1 is listed as destroyed, Bishop said, on a form signed by a foreman named Albert Hoyle, and every serious person in this field, including me, has spent 30 years assuming Albert Hoyle told the truth. Marcus sat down on the fender of his own truck. He didn't. He took it home in pieces, Bishop said. That's my guess. That's been my guess for a long time, and I've never said it out loud to anybody who mattered, because I liked Albert Hoyle's daughter, and I didn't want to make a thief out of a dead man. A pause. Mr. Hayes, where did the Coleridge family get their cars? I don't know. Find out. Because I'd bet you a great deal of money that somewhere in that chain there's a man who bought a crate of parts in 1974 from somebody in Warwickshire and never asked a single question. Mr. Bishop. Yes. What's it worth? The old man laughed, a dry little sound, almost pleased. You waited 11 minutes to ask me that. Most men ask in 11 seconds. I've got a bill of sale that says as is no representations. I don't need it to be worth anything. I asked because there's going to be a fight, and I'd like to know how big. How big? Bishop was quiet a moment. Mr. Hayes, there are 19 people on this earth who will want that car, and every one of them has more money than the town you live in. It is not a car. It's a document. It's the missing first page of something people have been writing books about for 50 years. Another pause. If it turns over under its own power with that plate with a chain of custody nobody can shoot holes in, I would not be able to tell you where the bidding stops. I've been wrong low before, and I've never once been wrong high. Give me a floor. 7. 7 what? Million, Walter Bishop said. That's the floor. That's if it doesn't run. Marcus looked at his own hands. "Sir," he said, "I have $2,200 in a coffee can and a 9-year-old who needs a coat this winter." "Then I would suggest," Bishop said, "that you be extremely careful for the next 2 weeks." The first man showed up on Thursday. He came in a rented sedan wearing a jacket without a tie, and he stood at the end of the driveway with his hands visible, which told Marcus he'd done this before. "Mr. Hayes, my name's Peter Lund. I represent a client." "Which client?" "I'm not able to say." "Then we're off to a great start." Lund smiled and didn't come any closer. "My client saw a video." "Everybody saw a video." "My client saw a car in a video." Lund nodded past him at the tarp. 3 frames of it actually at the back of the lot. That's all it took. He let that sit. "I'm authorized to write you a check today, $250,000. It clears Monday. You never have to see me again, and you never have to see the woman from the dealership again either." Ray, who was standing by the bench, made a small strangled noise. Marcus wiped his hands on the rag. "No," he said. Lund's eyebrows went up about a 1/4 inch. "You want to hear the rest of it before you answer that?" "There's no rest of it. 250's the number a man says when he's afraid to say a bigger one." "Mr. Hayes." "Mr. Lund, I appreciate you driving out. I mean that. But you didn't offer me $250,000 for a car. You offered it to get it off my property before I figure out what I've got, and you're 4 days late for that." Marcus put the rag down. "Tell your client I'll talk to him myself. Not to you. Him." Lund looked at him for a long moment and then unexpectedly laughed. "He said you'd say that." "Then why'd he send you?" "Because he's 83 years old and he's been disappointed a lot." Lund took out a card and set it on the mailbox instead of handing it over, which Marcus noticed. "For what it's worth off the record, and I'll deny it, my client has been looking for that car since 1991. He drove away. Ray sat down on an upturned bucket. "Marcus, don't. 250,000 to you, Ray. That's your daughter's whole life, brother. That's her college and her wedding and her first house, and that's $2,800 of what that car's worth," Marcus said. "And I'll tell you exactly what happens if I take it. That check clears, and that car goes on a trailer, and in 9 months it shows up at an auction in Arizona under a different name with a story about a barn in Kentucky, and nobody ever knows where it came from, or who found it, or what got done to it." He turned around, "And Victoria Sterling gets to be right." Ray opened his mouth, closed it. "That's what this is about," he said. "No, that's part of what this is about." Marcus went back to the car. "The other part is my kid put her hand on that hood and said it was beautiful before anybody knew a thing. I'm not selling her out for $250,000 to a man who won't say his own name." The call from Victoria came at 4:50 that afternoon. Marcus was under the dash. Ava answered the house phone because Ava answered the house phone the way children of the 90s answered it, with her whole chest. "Hayes residence." Then a second later, "Dad, it's the car lady." Marcus came out from under the dash slowly. He wiped his hands twice and walked inside and took the phone and said, "Marcus Hayes." "Mr. Hayes." Victoria's voice was different. He noticed that immediately, and so did she, and that was the problem. She could hear herself doing it. "It's Victoria Sterling." "I know. I think we need to discuss the vehicle again." Marcus looked out the kitchen window at the tarp in his driveway. 3 days ago," he said, "you called it garbage, twice. I understand you may have. You told a room full of your employees I was a man who wanted a life he couldn't have. Mr. Hayes. And now?" There was a silence on the line, and it went on long enough that Marcus could hear an air conditioner somewhere in her office. "Now I'd like to talk about it," Victoria said. "So talk." "Not on the phone." "Ma'am, I'm standing in my kitchen with grease on my hands and my daughter's doing long division at the table. The phone's what I've got." He heard her exhale. "There's a question about the paperwork," she said. "There's no question about the paperwork. I've read it more times than you have. There's a question about authority. The vehicle was part of an estate consignment, and there are internal approval thresholds. You signed it. I signed a bill of sale for a non-operational vehicle valued at scrap. You signed it. You set the price. You added a clause in your own words 10 minutes before I got to the counter, and you made me count cash out loud so everybody could watch." Marcus's voice never lifted. "Ms. Sterling, I want to be fair to you, so I'm going to tell you the truth. You are not calling me because of a threshold. You're calling me because somebody told you what's sitting in my driveway." Another silence. "Yes, Victoria said, and Marcus had to give her something for that, because he hadn't expected it. Okay, he said. Mr. Hayes, I'm prepared to make you a very generous offer to unwind the sale. Full refund, plus $100,000, plus a vehicle of your choice from our pre-owned inventory, up to $60,000, today, this afternoon. No, you haven't heard. I don't need to hear it, ma'am, and here's why. Marcus turned so he could see Ava at the table pencil in her fist tongue between her teeth. You still think you're buying a car back? I'm sorry. You're not. You're trying to buy back an afternoon. He said it gently, which somehow made it land harder. And that's not for sale because it doesn't belong to me. It belongs to the 9-year-old who was standing next to me while you did it. He heard something on the line. He couldn't tell what. Mr. Hayes, Victoria said, and her voice had gone tight. I want you to understand that if this becomes adversarial, you will be litigating against a company with an 11-person legal department, and the cost of that alone. There it is. That is not a threat, that is a fact. Ms. Sterling. Marcus closed his eyes. Can I tell you what you sound like right now? I'd rather you didn't. You sound like you did on the lot. You keep reaching for the same tool, money then size then the sound of your own name, and you're reaching for it right now while I'm standing here telling you it doesn't work on me, and you can't stop because it's the only tool in the box. He opened his eyes. That's not me insulting you. That's me telling you why you're going to lose. You have no idea what you're holding. I've got a pretty fair idea. She stopped, regrouped, and when she spoke again there was something underneath the polish that hadn't been there on the marble floor. What do you want? I already told you what I wanted, at the fence. You didn't hear it. Then say it again. A price, Marcus said. You gave me one. I paid it. That's the whole transaction. He hung up. He stood there with his hand still on the phone for about 10 seconds. Dad, Ava said without looking up from her worksheet, you did the voice. What voice? The one where you're being polite really hard. The letter came Friday morning by courier, which in that neighborhood meant a man in a van who had to ask 3 people where Dunbar Street was. Marcus read it at the kitchen table with his glasses on. 6 pages. Cure and demand. Assertion of unilateral mistake. Lack of corporate authority. Unjust enrichment. Demand for immediate return of the vehicle upon tender of the purchase price plus interest. Notice of intent to seek injunctive relief. Ray read it over his shoulder and swore. Can they do this? They can file it. Anybody can file anything. Marcus, an 11-person legal department. Is 11 people getting paid whether they win or not? Marcus turned to page 4. Here. What? They've alleged the vehicle was not identified, cataloged, or offered for retail sale, and was therefore not within the scope of the seller's ordinary course of business. He tapped it. Ray, read that back to me. Ray read it. They just put in writing, Marcus said, that it was never cataloged. So 9 cars came in on that estate, and 8 got cataloged. He took his glasses off. They're trying to argue the car was outside their normal business. But every word they wrote to prove that is a word about somebody keeping it out of their normal business. They can't have it both ways. Either it was an oversight or somebody did it on purpose. And if somebody did it on purpose, it wasn't her mistake, Ray said slowly. It was somebody's plan. And she doesn't know which yet. Marcus folded the letter. That's why the offer went up to $100,000 in 3 days. She's not bidding against me. She's bidding against something she can't see. The lawyer herself came at 6:40 that evening. Karen Pruitt did not send anybody. She parked at the curb, walked up the driveway in flats she'd changed into in the car, and stood at the edge of the garage light with her briefcase down at her side. Mr. Hayes, Karen Pruitt, I'm outside counsel for Sterling. You got my address off a bill of sale. I did. Come in or stay out, but don't stand in the doorway. It's how people get hurt in a shop. She came in 3 steps and stopped. I'm going to be very direct with you, she said, because I've read your file and I don't think the soft version works. I appreciate that. My client has authorized me to offer you $400,000. Ray, who was pretending to sort sockets, dropped a socket. That's up from 100 yesterday, Marcus said. It is. That's a lot of movement in 24 hours for a car that was garbage on Tuesday. Karen Pruitt did not blink. It is. Ms. Pruitt, can I ask you a professional question? You can ask. You've read the bill of sale 40 times. Then you've read the clause she added about contents, components, and documentation contained therein. Something moved across Karen Pruitt's face, very small, very fast, and completely honest. "Yes," she said. "You didn't write that." "No." "Would you have, no. Would you have let her?" Karen Pruitt looked at the silver shape under the light for a moment. "Mr. Hayes," she said, "I have been doing this for 22 years, and I want to tell you something that is not privileged and is not a settlement communication and is just a person talking. Do you know what the single most expensive thing in American business is? Tell me." "A powerful person in a bad mood with a pen." Marcus almost smiled. "400,000, she said. "It's real, it's today, and I'd take it if I were you, because the thing I can't tell you is what my client will do next. And the reason I can't tell you is that she hasn't decided, and she's not deciding well right now." "Ms. Pruitt?" "Yes." "When you go back tonight, will you ask her one question for me?" "Depends on the question." "Ask her who Gil Marchetti is." Karen Pruitt's face did not change at all, which is how Marcus knew he'd hit something. "Why?" she said. "Because I called the Coleridge family this afternoon," Marcus said. "The son. He's 68 and he lives in Tampa, and he was happy to talk to me for 40 minutes because nobody's asked him about his father in 9 years. He put the wrench down. He told me a man came out to look at the collection twice, once with the appraisal team and once alone 3 days earlier. And the man alone spent an hour and 10 minutes in the back of that garage with a flashlight and never took the sheet off any of the other cars." Ray had stopped pretending to sort sockets. "He remembered the name," Karen said. "He remembered the hat. Then he found the business card in his father's desk drawer, because that's the kind of man he is." Marcus reached over and picked up a piece of notebook paper off the bench and held it out. "So yes, he remembered the name." Karen Pruitt did not take the paper. "I'm not able to accept documents from you." "Then read it from here." She read it from there. She stood in a stranger's garage on Dunbar Street for a good 10 seconds, reading a name off a piece of notebook paper in a man's hand, and then she picked up her briefcase. $400,000 is on the table until Monday at 9, she said. "Understood. Mr. Hayes." At the edge of the light, she stopped. "The clause, about the contents." "Yes, ma'am." "Have you looked?" Marcus looked at her. "Not yet," he said. She left. I did it that night because he wasn't going to sleep anyway, and because Karen Pruitt had asked the question, and lawyers don't ask questions they don't already suspect the shape of. He took the driver's seat out. 4 bolts seized all 4, and it took him 50 minutes with heat and penetrant and a breaker bar and one moment where he sat back on his heels and said something Ava was not awake to hear. The shell came up out of the tunnel, and he set it on a moving blanket like it was made of eggshell. Underneath the floor was bare. Nothing. He shone the light along the tunnel. Nothing. He ran his hand up under the dash along the front of the seat frame into the channel where the frame rail turned, and his fingers touched something that was not metal. He got the light in there. Taped up under the frame rail in the pocket where a man's hand would never go was a flat packet wrapped in oilcloth and bound with wire, and the wire had been twisted by somebody's fingers a very long time ago, and the oilcloth had gone brittle and dark at the folds. Marcus Hayes sat down on the garage floor next to his daughter's chalk drawings with his back against the rocker panel and held it in both hands without opening it. It weighed about as much as a paperback book. He looked up at the ceiling of his own garage for a second. Then he said quietly to nobody at all, any and all documentation contained therein, and he started very carefully to untwist the wire. The wire came apart in 3 turns, and it did not fight him. It had been twisted by a man in a hurry who still cared enough to fold the corners of the cloth over first. Marcus laid it flat on the moving blanket and opened it the way you open something that might crumble from the outside in, and then he sat there on the concrete floor of his own garage at 10 minutes past 1 in the morning and looked at what a dead man had hidden under a seat rail. There were papers. That was all. No gold, no keys, no gun, nothing a movie would have put there. Papers. On top was a build sheet mimeograph, purple ink gone to lavender with columns filled in by hand in a small square draftsman's print. Down the left side, a list of assemblies. Down the right side, initials and dates. And across the top, typed the same 12 characters that were stamped on the plate under the cowl, ending in a slash and a 1. Underneath that were 19 more pages of the same one for each week. Underneath that was a folded drawing on onion skin, a section view of an upright and a caliper 6 pistons with a note in the corner in the same square print. Allie says, "The outboard pair will cook. Allie is right. C. Rev C." And underneath the drawing were 4 photographs, black and white, 3.5 by 5, and in the first one, there were 11 men standing in front of a silver car in a brick shop with the doors open behind them, and every one of them was squinting, and one of them, second from the left, was holding a file. Marcus turned it over. On the back in pencil, number 1, last day, A.H.B. Tarrant, Ali Nazir the Lads, 14 June 66. He sat very still. The last thing in this packet was a single sheet of paper folded in quarters thinner than the rest, and when he opened it he saw handwriting that wasn't square and wasn't neat and wasn't a draftsman's, and he understood before he read a word that this one had been written by the same man in a different condition entirely. He read it 3 times. Then he set it down on his knee and put the heel of his hand against his eyes and stayed like that a while. He called Walter Bishop at 1:40 in the morning because Walter Bishop had told him to, and because Marcus needed a witness before he needed sleep. The old man picked up on the second ring. Say it. There's a packet under the seat rail. Say what's in it. Build sheets. 19 weekly build sheets with the chassis number typed at the top of every one. A section drawing of the front upright hand-inked with a revision note. 4 photographs of the shop floor dated the 14th of June, 1966. Marcus's voice was flat and careful the way it got when he was holding himself steady. And a letter. There was a sound on the line like a chair moving. Mr. Hayes. Yes, sir. Is there a name on the letter? There's a name at the bottom. Read it to me. Albert Hoyle, Marcus said. Walter Bishop did not say anything for so long that Marcus checked the screen to see if the call had dropped. Sir. Read me the letter, Bishop said. His voice had gone strange. Slowly. Please. So Marcus read it out loud in his garage at 20 to 2 in the morning, to whoever gets her running. I was told to cut her up. I have signed the form saying I did. That is a lie, and I know what it makes me, and I have made my peace with it. Number 2 through 5 went into the skip on Tuesday, and I helped, and I will not write down what it was like. She is the first one. Every drawing we have came off her. If she goes, the whole thing was never here. They can burn the drawings they burn twice a year, but they cannot burn her if she is in my shed. I have taken out the loom in 11 places at the service loops and taped every end, so nothing shorts and nothing burns. I have drained her and turned her over by hand every month. She is not broken. She is asleep. Any man with sense will see the difference in 10 minutes. I am 54. I do not think I will be the one. If you are reading this, then somebody was decent enough to sell her on instead of weighing her in, and I thank them. Do not let anybody tell you she is nothing. I was there when she was everything. Albert Hoyle Foreman, 14 June, 1966. Marcus stopped. On the other end of the line, 91 years old in a house in Pennsylvania. Walter Bishop was crying. He wasn't hiding it, and he wasn't apologizing for it, and after a while he blew his nose and came back. I want you to put that letter in a plastic sleeve, he said, and I want you to put the sleeve in a bank. Yes, sir. I called that man a thief for 30 years. You didn't say it out loud. I said it in print, Mr. Hayes. In 1994, page 211, I wrote that the disposal records at that works could not be trusted because of one foreman's carelessness. Bishop's breath caught and steadied. Carelessness. Mr. Bishop. Yes. He wasn't careless. He was the only one on the whole floor who was paying attention. I'm aware of that now. So write page 211 again, Marcus said. You've got time. You're the one holding the pen. There was a long pause. How old are you? Bishop asked. 51. You talk like somebody's grandfather. I've been told. Mr. Hayes, I'm going to come out there. Sir, you're 91. Which is exactly why I'm not going to wait for the good weather, Bishop said and hung up. Ava found him at the kitchen table at 6:30, with the photographs laid out in a row and the letter under a sheet of plastic he'd cut off a school folder. You didn't sleep again. No. Dad. I know. She climbed onto the chair on her knees the way he'd told her not to 1,000 times and looked at the pictures. Who are they? Men who built the car in the driveway. All of them. All of them. 11 of them. Took them about 5 months. She pointed at the second from the left. Why's that one holding a file? Marcus looked at his daughter for a second. Because he's the one who made the doors fit, he said. That's the man. That's Albert Hoyle. Is he the one who wrote the letter? Yes. Is he alive? No baby. Did he know somebody would find it? He hoped. Ava studied the photograph a while longer, the way she studied everything which was too long and too closely, and with her whole face. Dad, is this the part where we get rich? Marcus laughed, a short, surprised bark of a laugh, the first one in 4 days. Where'd you hear that? Uncle Ray said it to Miss Denise on the porch. He said, this is the part where he gets rich, or the part where he loses the house. Uncle Ray talks too much. So which is it? Marcus took his glasses off and rubbed his eyes. Ava, sit down all the way in the chair, feet on the floor. She sat down all the way, feet on the floor. Some people are going to offer me money in the next couple weeks, he said. A lot of money, more than you can imagine, and more than I can imagine either, and I'm going to say no to most of it. Why? Because taking the first money means the story ends with me, and that's not what this is. He tapped the letter under the plastic. That man went home from work and lied on a government form and hid a car in a shed for the rest of his life so that somebody someday could see it. He didn't get anything for that. He didn't get thanked. He died, and a man wrote in a book that he was careless. Ava's chin came up. That's not fair. No. So what do? We finish it, Marcus said. We wake her up. We put his name back where it belongs. And then I think we probably get rich. Ava considered that. Can we get the money after school, though? She said, because I have a spelling test. At 9 o'clock Monday morning, Karen Pruitt called, and Marcus answered on the first ring because he'd been holding the phone. Mr. Hayes. Ms. Pruitt. It's 9. It is. $400,000. No, ma'am. She didn't argue. He heard a pen click on the other end. Can I ask why for my file? You can ask for real or for the file. Which one? A beat. For real, Karen Pruitt said. Because on Friday night you asked me if I'd looked in the car, Marcus said. And you asked it in a way that told me you'd read that clause 40 times and knew what it might mean. So I looked. Silence. And I'm not going to tell you what I found because you're not my lawyer, you're hers. He let that sit for a second. But I'll tell you this much because you came to my house yourself instead of sending a kid. Whatever your client thinks she sold me for $2,800, she sold me less than half of it. Karen Pruitt exhaled slowly. Mr. Hayes, do you have counsel? I'm getting some today. Get good counsel. I intend to. Get counsel who has done provenance work, she said. Not a general practitioner, not somebody's cousin. Somebody who has stood up in a room and argued about a chassis number. Another click of the pen. And Mr. Hayes, that is the last piece of free advice you're getting from me, because after this call, we are on opposite sides of something, and I'm going to be very good at my job. Ms. Pruitt. Yes. Did you ask her the question? I asked her the question. What did she say? Karen Pruitt was quiet for a long moment. She said, Gil handles acquisitions, she said. And then she sat down. And Mr. Hayes, I have watched that woman get told the IRS was in the building without sitting down. 6 miles away, Gil Marchetti had come back from Scottsdale a day early. He walked into Victoria's office at 8:15 that same Monday in a linen jacket, 63 years old, tan the way men get tan when they've been in the business long enough to make the business come to them, and he put a paper cup of coffee on her desk the way he had every Monday for 11 years. You wanted me. Sit down, Gil. I'll stand. I've been on a plane. Sit down. He sat. Victoria had a folder in front of her. She did not open it. 9 cars came in on the Coleridge estate in 2016, she said. Sounds right. 8 got catalogued. Gil Marchetti's face did not move, not a flicker, and that Victoria would think later was the moment, not what he said, but the fact that a man who was told the number of cars in a 9-year-old estate deal did not have to think about it for even a half second. The silver one was junk, he said. Was it? Vic, I looked at it myself. Seized, cut up, no numbers on it that made any sense. There's a plate under the cowl. There's no plate under. He stopped. The room got very quiet. Victoria leaned back. Finish that, she said. Finish what? You were going to say there's no plate under the cowl. You'd have to have looked under the cowl to know that. She tilted her head. So did you look under the cowl, Gil? You're being ridiculous. Trevor Ames pulled the condition report. 1 page, no photographs. Signed the same day the transport arrived. She finally opened the folder. Total loss, non-salvageable, recommend hold for disposal. Your initials. That's my job. You wrote hold for disposal, Gil. Not scrap, not auction. Hold. She looked up. That car sat in the corner of my back lot under a tree for 9 years and cost me $11,000 in space and insurance, and every time I said clear the lot, you told me the auction market was soft. Because it was soft. Who is Redlands Holdings? Gil Marchetti stopped breathing for about a second and a half. Victoria had spent 20 years reading people across desks, and she had been catastrophically wrong about a man in a canvas jacket 6 days ago, and she knew sitting there watching the color go out of a friend's face that she had never once been wrong in the direction that cost her nothing. Dale ran the disposal list, she said. 41 vehicles written off as non-salvageable in 9 years. 19 of them were bought at closed auction by 4 LLCs. 3 of those 4 share a registered agent. She slid a page across. Redlands Holdings is the 4th. Redlands Holdings has your daughter's name on the incorporation. Victoria, how long? It's not what, how long? 7 years, Gil said. She sat back in her chair. Say it out loud. Vic. Say it out loud, Gil, because I want to hear it in a voice, not in a spreadsheet, and then you're going to walk out of my building. Gil Marchetti put both hands flat on his knees. I flagged cars, he said. Cars that came in on trades and estates where nobody was watching. I wrote them down as scrap. I let them sit until they went to a disposal auction where nobody but the disposal guys bid, and I bought them for nothing, and I fixed them, and I sold them. He shrugged, and there was something awful in the shrug, something practiced. It's a rounding error to you. It's every one of them under 15 grand at the door. And the silver one? Silence. The silver one wasn't a rounding error, was it? No. What was it? Gil Marchetti looked at the carpet for a while. It was a pension, he said. Victoria closed her eyes. I knew in 2016, he said, the second I got a light under the front end. I knew the general shape of it. I didn't know exactly what it was, and I didn't want to know yet, because the second you know, you have to tell somebody, and then it's a thing with a file on it. He looked up. So I wrote 1 page, and I put it in the corner, and I figured in a couple years I'd buy it off the disposal list for $600 like the rest, and I'd spend my retirement figuring out what I had. For 9 years you let it sit under a tree. A tree is fine, Vic. Rain's fine. It's aluminum. You let it sit under a tree in my lot. And you never once walked to the back of your own lot. Gil's voice came up for the first time, and it was ugly, and it was true. 9 years, not once you want to know why it worked, because you don't look at anything that isn't shiny. That's the whole system. That's the entire con, and it took me about 4 months to figure it out, and I have been eating off it ever since. Victoria did not move. Get out of my building. Vic, get out of my building and do not touch a single piece of paper on your way out, and understand that everything from here goes through lawyers. Her voice was completely level. And Gil, one more thing. He stopped at the door. Last Tuesday, she said, a man came in here with his daughter and $3,400, and he stood in my back lot for 4 minutes, and he found in 4 minutes what you found in 1 hour and I never found in 9 years. She was looking straight at him, and I laughed at him in front of 40 people, and it's on the internet. Gil didn't say anything. So when you're telling yourself I deserved this, Victoria said, you're right, just not for the reason you think. Dale Whitmer came in an hour later and closed the door behind him. He's out. Security walked him. His laptop's in my office and I haven't opened it. Don't. Give it to Karen. Victoria. Dale sat down. I need you to hear the whole number. Say it. 19 vehicles that we can prove over 7 years at roughly $110,000 under market apiece. That's $2.1 million in direct loss, and it's fraud by a corporate officer, which means our E&O carrier is going to want a conversation. And if any of those 19 had title issues, we're going to hear from 19 buyers. He paused. And that's before the other thing. Say the other thing. The other thing is that when this comes out, and it will come out because these things always come out, the story is not going to be dealership defrauded by employee. The story is going to be the woman from the video also had a guy stealing cars out of her back lot for 7 years and never noticed. Victoria looked out the window of her office at the lot she'd never walked to the back of. How bad? Sun Valley's gone, confirmed this morning. 2 more fleet accounts are pausing. Dale's voice softened, which he almost never did. Vic, I'm not going to tell you the company's in danger because it isn't. You built something with real bones, but the brand took a hit it didn't have to take, and the hit didn't come from Gil. It came from me. It came from 90 seconds of you being ugly to somebody who didn't deserve it. Dale said. "And I've known you 19 years, and I don't actually think you're ugly. That's what's been keeping me up." Victoria was quiet for a long moment. "Dale." "Yeah." "Pull the injunction." Dale sat up. "What?" "Karen filed for an emergency hearing to stop him selling the car. Pull it." "Victoria, if we pull it, we have no leverage at all." "I know what we have. And the number that man is sitting on, if it's real, is—" "I know what he's sitting on, Dale." She turned around. "And I need you to hear something, and then I need you to argue with me, because you're the only one who does. On Tuesday, I sold a car for $2,800 because I wanted to humiliate a mechanic. Every single thing that's happened since is downstream of that. There's no version of this where I'm the wronged party. There's only a version where I spend $2 million in legal fees to be publicly wrong for 11 months. Dale sat with it. "That's the right analysis," he said slowly. "And I'm still going to argue with you because it's my job. Karen thinks there's a real authority argument. Corporate officer, no board approval sale of an asset materially outside ordinary course. And when he stands up and says, 'She set the price herself and made me count cash on the counter in front of her employees,' what does the judge do?" Dale rubbed his face. "The judge asks how much cash," he said. "The judge asks how much cash." Victoria nodded once. "Pull it." Dale stood up and got as far as the door and turned around. "Karen won't pull it. Karen works for us. Karen works for us, and Karen has a client with an obligation to its insurers to preserve claims, and if you drop a colorable claim to a $2 million plus asset with a fraud investigation running, your carrier will say you waived it." He shrugged, apologetic. "The hearing's going forward, Vic. Friday morning. It's not up to you anymore." Victoria stared at him. "It's not up to me," she repeated. "No. Because of a lawyer and an insurance company." "Yeah." Victoria Sterling started to laugh, one short exhale, no humor in it at all. "He told me that would happen," she said. "Who did?" "Him, on the phone. He said I keep reaching for the same tool and I can't stop." She sat down slowly. "I thought he was being clever." At Dunbar Street, the car came apart. Not all of it. Marcus was very clear with himself about that, and he said it out loud to Ray on the second day, so there'd be a witness to hold him to it. "We are not restoring this car. We're not— No, we are waking it up." He held up a finger. "Anything Albert Hoyle touched stays. Anything that keeps her from running gets fixed with the smallest hand I've got. That's the whole rule. Say it back to me." "You're serious." "Ray, there are people who will pay 10 times more for original dirt than for a new paint job, but that's not why." "Then why?" "Because it's not mine to improve," Marcus said. "It's mine to finish." They started with the loom. 11 cuts, 11 service loops, every end taped by a man who'd been dead for decades. Marcus spliced each one by hand, soldered heat shrunk, and left Hoyle's tape on the ends coiled and tucked, because it wasn't in the way, and because he wasn't going to be the one to throw it out. He pulled the plugs on the second night and put a light down the bores. "Well," Ray said, "bores are perfect." "You're kidding." "He oiled her." Marcus stood up with the light. "He oiled her and he turned her over by hand every month for however long he had, and then somebody after him did it too, or she'd be a brick." He shook his head slowly. "There's no rust in her, Ray. 9 years under a tree and there's no rust in her. So why won't she turn?" "Because something's mechanically locked, not seized. That's a different thing." Marcus put the light down. "And I've got a guess, and I'm not going to like it." I was right about not liking it. The engine wasn't stuck. The engine was stopped. A timing chain tensioner had let go at some point in the last 60 years, and a chain had jumped and 2 valves were kissing 2 pistons and the whole thing was locked up like a fist. He sat on the bumper of his truck for 20 minutes, looking at the front of the motor. Then he called Bishop. "The tensioner's failed and I've got contact on 2 valves. "Which side?" "Front bank cylinders 1 and 3. "Do you have compression on the rest?" "Haven't got there yet. But the bores are clean and there's oil film everywhere I look." "Then you don't have a problem. You have a parts problem," Bishop said. "And I need you to hear the next thing very carefully. Do not put a modern tensioner in that engine." I wasn't going to. "People will tell you to. People will tell you, nobody will ever know." "Mr. Bishop, I'm not putting anything in that car that Albert Hoyle wouldn't recognize." There was a pause on the line. "Then I'm going to make a phone call," Bishop said, to a man in Coventry who owes me a favor from 1987, and if he's alive, and if he still has the shelves he used to have, you will have what you need in 6 days. And Mr. Hayes, you're going to have to bend 2 valves back to true or find new ones, and there are no new ones. I know. There are no new ones anywhere on this earth. Mr. Bishop. Marcus looked at the cylinder head sitting on the bench wrapped in a towel like a baby. I've been fixing things nobody makes parts for since I was 19 years old. That's not the hard part. Then what's the hard part? The hard part is I've got 8 days and a hearing on Friday. The parts came on day 11 in a wooden crate from a man in Coventry named Douglas Fenn, who had put a handwritten note inside that said, "Only Bishop says it's her. If it is her, tell her the lads say hello." Marcus read that note standing in his driveway and had to go inside for a minute. Walter Bishop himself arrived on day 12, driven by his daughter in a Buick, having refused to fly. I was smaller than Marcus expected. That was the first thing. 91 years old, a cane, a cardigan in July, and hands with knuckles like walnuts. His daughter helped him out of the car, and he shook Marcus's hand, and then he turned and looked at the open garage and stopped. Nobody said anything for about 15 seconds. "Mr. Bishop," Marcus said. The old man's mouth worked. "That's her," he said. "Yes, sir. That's her." He took 2 steps and had to put his hand on Ray's arm, and Ray, who had never met him, held on like it was his own father. "I saw her in a photograph when I was 34 years old. In a folder in an archive in Newport Pagnell. 1 photograph. And I have thought about her every year since." "Sir, do you want to sit down?" "I want to touch it," Walter Bishop said. "Is that all right?" Marcus's voice came out rougher than he intended. "Sir, it's your car more than it's mine." Bishop walked to the front fender and put his hand flat on the silver right where Ava had put hers, and he stood there with his eyes closed for a long time, and none of the 3 men in that garage said one single word. Then he opened his eyes and said, "Where is the letter?" Marcus went and got it. Bishop read it standing up, refused the chair twice, and when he was done, he folded his hands over the plastic and said, "I would like to write to his family." "Mr. Coleridge's son found an address in Yorkshire," Marcus said. "There's a granddaughter. She's 61. She's a school teacher." Bishop looked up sharply. "You've already found her." "I found her Wednesday." "Have you spoken to her?" "Twice." Marcus rubbed the back of his neck. "First time she thought I was a scam. Second time she called me back at 11 at night crying because her father used to tell her a story about a car in her grandfather's shed, and everybody in the family said the old man made it up." Walter Bishop sat down after all. "Everybody said he made it up," he repeated. "Yes, sir." "And what did you tell her?" "I told her I'd send photographs," Marcus said, "and I told her that when it runs, she gets the first video before the auction house, before the press, before anybody." Bishop looked at him for a long moment. "Mr. Hayes, may I ask you something impertinent?" "Go ahead." "You are about to become a wealthy man, and I have watched a great many men become wealthy, and it does something to the face." Bishop's eyes were very sharp for 91. "Why are you spending your last week on a schoolteacher in Yorkshire?" Marcus wiped his hands on the rag slow. "Because on Tuesday the 14th, he said, a woman looked at me for 1.5 seconds and decided she knew everything about me, and she was wrong, and it cost her about $10 million. He hung the rag on the bench. "Albert Hoyle got looked at for 1.5 seconds too in a book in 1994. Page 211. Nobody ever gave him the $10 million back." Bishop's jaw tightened. "So I'm giving him what I can," Marcus said, "which is his name." The engine went back together on the night of day 13. Ray stayed. Bishop stayed in a folding chair with a blanket his daughter made him take, and he did not sleep and he did not talk except twice, and both times he was right. The valves came out at 4 thousandths, and Marcus took them to a machinist he'd known for 20 years who opened his shop at 11 at night and refused money. "You're insulting me, Marcus." "Nobody's insulting anybody. Man brings me the only 2 of something on earth and wants to hand me $80. The machinist waved him off. "Send me a picture when she runs." At 1:20 in the morning, the head went down. At 2:40, the timing was set, twice checked by Bishop. With a flashlight, he would not surrender. At 3:15, Marcus primed the oil system with a drill and a shaft and watched pressure come up on a gauge that had been dead since Lyndon Johnson was president. At 3:50, he stopped. "What?" Ray said. "Nothing." "Marcus." "I said nothing." "You've been standing there 90 seconds holding a fuel line." Marcus set the line down. "If she doesn't light," he said. "I've got a hearing in 5 hours and $400,000 I turned down, and a 9-year-old asleep in that house." Ray came over and stood next to him. "And if she does light, then a man who's been dead 50 years wins an argument he lost in 1966. Ray put his hand on his shoulder. "Then let's find out," he said. They woke Ava at 4:20 because Marcus had promised, and she came out in her jacket over her pajamas with her hair flat on one side, and she took one look at the garage and woke all the way up. "Is it now?" "It's now." "Do I have to do anything?" Marcus opened the driver's door. "Get in," he said. Ava stopped. "Me. You're the one who said she was beautiful," Marcus said. "You said it first. Everybody else said garbage. You get the key." She sat down in a seat that had held 11 men's hopes in 1966, and she put her hands on the wheel, and her feet did not reach anything at all. "What do I do?" "Turn it 2 clicks and hold it at the 3rd. Not hard. She's old." "How old? 60. "That's old." "Ava." "Yeah. If she doesn't start, that's not you. That's me. You understand? If she doesn't start, it's because your daddy missed something, and we'll find it and we'll do it again tomorrow." His hand was on the door frame, and it was not steady. "Okay. Okay. Okay." Ray stood by the front fender with a fire extinguisher, because that is what you do. Walter Bishop stood up out of his chair without help, which his daughter would have had something to say about, and put his hand on the back of the seat. "Miss Hayes," he said. Ava turned around. "Yes, sir." "There were 11 men in a shop in England on the 14th of June 1966, Bishop said, "and they thought they were the last people who would ever see this car alive." Ava looked at him for a second. "They were wrong," she said. "Yes," said Walter Bishop. "They were." She turned the key 2 clicks. The fuel pump ticked a sound nobody in that garage had ever heard, and all of them recognized, and then it went quiet as the float closed, and Marcus said, "Now, baby, 3rd click. Hold it." She held it. The starter dragged. Once, twice, slow, heavy 60 years of nothing, 3 times, and on the 4th, deep down in the front of that engine, something caught. It didn't roar. That's the thing Marcus would tell people afterward over and over, and nobody ever believed him because they wanted a roar. It didn't roar. It cleared its throat. It came up rough and uneven on 4 cylinders, then 5, then all of them at once, and the whole car shook on its springs like a dog coming out of water, and Ava screamed and did not let go of the key, and Marcus reached in over her and steadied the throttle with 2 fingers until the idle came down and settled and held. Ray was shouting. The fire extinguisher was on the floor. Down the street, a porch light came on, and then another one. And Walter Bishop, 91 years old, stood in a garage on Dunbar Street with both hands on the back of a seat and listened to an engine he had spent 57 years believing was scrap metal in a skip in Warwickshire. "Mr. Hayes," he said. He had to say it twice to be heard. "Sir, Albert Hoyle was not careless," Walter Bishop said. Marcus reached over his daughter's head and put his hand flat on the dash on top of a plate nobody had bothered to read in 9 years. "No, sir," he said. "He wasn't." The engine ran for 11 minutes that first time, and Marcus never once touched the throttle after the idle settled, because he wanted to hear what she did on her own. At 4:51 in the morning, he shut her down, and the garage rang with the absence of it. "Do it again," Ray said. "No." "Marcus." "She's got 60-year-old rubber in her fuel system and a hearing in 4 hours. Marcus put his palm on the rocker cover. It was warm. That was the part that got him after everything. The metal was warm. "She's done what she needed to do." Ava was still in the seat, both hands on the wheel, not moving. "Baby, I don't want to get out yet." "Then don't." Walter Bishop lowered himself back into the folding chair like a man setting down something heavy, and his daughter put the blanket over his knees again, and he let her, which told everybody how tired he was. "Mr. Hayes." "Sir, you said the granddaughter gets it first." Marcus already had the phone out. He'd filmed the whole thing on a 9-year-old handset propped against a socket set, and the picture was bad and the sound was worse, and it didn't matter. He watched it once. 11 minutes cut down to 90 seconds. A little girl's hands on a wheel, a starter dragging 4 times, and then a sound that hadn't existed on this earth since a foreman in Warwickshire signed a lie on a government form. He typed one line under it. "Mrs. Ellis, your grandfather was right about everything." M. Hayes. It was 9:45 in the morning in Yorkshire. The phone rang back in 4 minutes. Marcus stepped out into the driveway to take it because he already knew what it was going to be. Mr. Hayes. Her voice was wrecked. Mr. Hayes, I'm sorry. I'm at school. I'm in the corridor. I've got a Year 6 class in 8 minutes. Take your time, ma'am. I've watched it 4 times. Yes, ma'am. My father. She stopped. Started again. My father died in 2011, and the last time we spoke about my grandfather, he told that story about the shed, and I told him it was a story. I said, Dad, if there was a racing car in Granddad's shed, somebody would have known. I said it kindly, but I said it. Marcus stood in his own driveway in the dark and closed his eyes. Mrs. Ellis. Eleanor. Eleanor. There's a man here 91 years old, come all the way from Pennsylvania, who wrote in a book in 1994 that your grandfather was careless. I know. I've got the book. That stopped him. You've got it. My father bought every one of them, Eleanor Ellis said. Every book about that factory. He read them looking for the name, and it was never in there except that once, and that once was the bad way. She laughed, and it came apart in the middle. He kept it anyway. It's in my hall. Page 211 has a corner turned down. Marcus had to take the phone away from his ear for a second. Ma'am, he's asked to write to you. He can write to me. He's going to want to do more than write. Then let him, she said. Mr. Hayes, I have to go and teach fractions to 11-year-olds, and I don't know how I'm going to do it. Can I ask you something first? Anything. Did he say anything in the letter? Did he say why? Marcus looked back at the open garage, at the silver shape, at the old man in the folding chair. He said, I was there when she was everything, Marcus said. There was a long silence on a phone line 4,000 miles wide. That's him, Eleanor Ellis said. That's exactly him. Nadine Cabral had flown in Wednesday night on Bishop's recommendation and had spent 2 days doing things Marcus didn't fully understand and paying for none of it up front, which he'd argued about and lost. She met him on the courthouse steps at 8:35 with a rolling case and a cup of coffee she handed straight to him. You look like a man who started a car at 4:50 in the morning. I did start a car at 4:50 in the morning. Don't say that inside. She started walking. Rule 1. You answer what you're asked. You do not explain. You are the most likable person in that room by a factor of 10, and every extra sentence you say makes you less likable. Understood. Rule 2. If Pruitt gets under your skin, that's her job, and she's good at it, and I like her, which should worry you. Rule 3. There is no Rule 3, there's just the contract, and the contract is a brick wall with their name on it. Nadine held the door. Marcus, are you ready for the part where a judge might say no? Marcus stopped in the doorway. Ma'am, he said, I've had people say no to me my whole life. Today somebody's going to have to say it in a robe and put it in writing. That's a step up. Courtroom 4B held maybe 60 people, and there were about 90 trying. The kid from the detail bay was not there. He'd been fired on Wednesday, but 4 reporters were, and 2 men. Marcus didn't recognize who Nadine identified in a whisper as auction house people, and one very old man in the back row in a gray suit who Marcus noticed and did not think about again for another 6 hours. Victoria Sterling came in at 8:52, with Karen Pruitt on one side and Dale Whitmer on the other. She had not slept either. Marcus could see it from 30 feet. She looked at him. He looked back. Neither of them nodded, and neither of them looked away, and that was the entire conversation. Judge Ruth Amberg took the bench at 9:04, and she had read everything, and she made that clear in the first 90 seconds. Counsel, I've got an emergency motion for a temporary restraining order barring the sale, transfer, or removal of a motor vehicle. Ms. Pruitt, your papers say 98 pages. I want 6 minutes. Karen Pruitt stood up. Your Honor, this is not a case about a bargain. This is a case about authority. Sterling Elite Motors is a corporation with a board with thresholds with an asset committee. The vehicle in question was never cataloged, never appraised, never brought within the ordinary course of retail sale. Because an officer of your client concealed it. Karen didn't flinch. Because an officer of my client concealed it. Yes, Your Honor, that's precisely the point. My client is the victim of a 7-year internal fraud, and the purchaser walked into the middle of it and picked up $2 million of value for the price of a used lawnmower. $2 million. That's our conservative figure. Mr. Hayes's papers say the floor is 7 and there's no ceiling. Mr. Hayes's papers rely on a 91-year-old historian, Your Honor. Behind Marcus, Walter Bishop said quite clearly, "I am sitting here." The gallery laughed. Judge Amberg did not, but something happened around her eyes. "Sir, one more and you're outside." "Yes, Your Honor." "Ms. Cabral, 6 minutes." Nadine stood up and didn't open a folder. "Your Honor, Ms. Pruitt's argument requires you to believe that the sale of this vehicle was outside her client's ordinary course of business. I direct the court to Exhibit 3, the bill of sale. The bill of sale signed by the chief executive officer of the corporation who set the price personally, who conducted the transaction personally at the primary sales counter of the flagship location during business hours, in front of a minimum of 6 employees." Nadine let it sit exactly 1 beat. If that isn't ordinary course, then nothing that company has ever done is ordinary course, and every deal on their books is void. Ms. Pruitt says there was no authority. Your Honor, she is the authority. She's the CEO, she's the majority shareholder, and there is no board minute anywhere in 98 pages that limits her signature. What they mean by no authority is bad judgment. Nadine finally looked down at the table. And I'd note for the record that bad judgment isn't a cause of action. If it were, this courthouse would need a second building. Get to the clause. Yes, Your Honor. Exhibit 3, paragraph 9. Handwritten insertion typed into the document 10 minutes before execution at Ms. Sterling's direction. In Ms. Sterling's own words, drafted by a person with no legal training. Nadine read it. Seller makes no representation as to the vehicle's identity model designation year or history. Buyer accepts full and final ownership of the vehicle and any and all contents, components, and documentation contained therein. Judge Amberg's pen stopped. She wrote that. She wrote that, Your Honor. Ms. Pruitt, did your client write paragraph 9, Karen? Pruitt stood up very slowly, and Marcus, who had watched her stand in his garage on a Friday night, understood exactly what it cost her. She did, Your Honor. Why, Your Honor? I'm asking you why a chief executive personally drafted a clause disclaiming knowledge of a vehicle's identity and history on a $2,800 as-is sale of a car she has repeatedly described as garbage. Karen Pruitt did not look at her client. Because she wanted to foreclose any later claim by the buyer, Your Honor. So she was worried the buyer would come back. Yes. And instead the seller came back. Yes, Your Honor. Judge Amberg wrote something down that took her about 11 seconds. Nadine called one witness. Trevor Ames was 26 years old, and he had been unemployed for exactly 40 hours, and he took the stand in the same suit he'd worn on the day he told Marcus that service was around the side. Mr. Ames, what was your position on the 14th? Sales associate, Sterling Elite Motors. And your position now? I don't have one. When did that change? Wednesday. Who terminated you? Nobody said it out loud. My badge stopped working. Karen Pruitt was on her feet. Objection. Speculation. Sustained. Move on, Ms. Cabral. Mr. Ames, were you present at the sales counter on the afternoon of the 14th? I was. Describe what you saw. And Trevor Ames, in a room with a court reporter in it, described a man in a canvas jacket counting 28 $100 bills onto a marble counter one at a time with his glasses on, while the chief executive of the company watched and 3 employees pretended to be busy. How long did that take? 40 seconds, maybe a little more. Was there any business reason to require it? No, ma'am. Objection. He worked there for 4 years, Ms. Pruitt. Overruled. Was there any business reason? Nadine repeated. No, Trevor said. We count cash in the office. We have a counter machine. It's a $2,000 machine and it's 40 feet away. Then why was it done at the counter? Trevor Ames looked at his former employer for the first time, and there was nothing vindictive in it at all, which somehow made it worse. Because she wanted people to watch, he said. Judge Amberg called a 15-minute recess at 10:20, and everyone stood up and the hallway filled, and Marcus went and got a paper cup of water from a fountain because his hands needed something to do. Victoria Sterling was standing by the window when he turned around. Dale was 20 feet off watching, and Karen Pruitt was watching harder, and neither of them came over, which meant Victoria had told them not to. Mr. Hayes, Ms. Sterling, I'm told I'm not supposed to talk to you. Then you probably shouldn't. No, she agreed, and didn't move. They stood there. Down the hall, a door closed. It runs, she said. Yes, ma'am. When 4:50 this morning. Victoria nodded slowly, looking out the window at a parking lot. My father sold tires, she said. Marcus waited. 2 bays out on 40. He had a sign he painted himself and it was crooked and I was embarrassed by it for 11 years. She said it evenly like a report. When I was 19, a man came in with a car we couldn't fix, and my father spent 4 hours on it and charged him nothing, and the man never came back, and I decided that day that I was never going to be somebody people looked past. So you made sure you were the one doing the looking? Yes. How's it been? Victoria's mouth moved. It wasn't a smile. 19 years, 11 locations, and I have never once walked to the back of my own lot, she said. A man stole from me for 7 of them, and the reason it worked is that I only look at the front. Marcus turned the paper cup around in his fingers. Ms. Sterling, can I say something you're not going to like? Everyone else has. I don't think you did it because you thought I was poor. No. I think you did it because you were sure. He said it without any heat at all. You looked at me for a second and a half and you got an answer, and the answer felt good, and it's felt good for 19 years, and nobody in your life is in a position to tell you when it's wrong. That's not money. That's just nobody ever saying no to you. Victoria Sterling stood very still. In the showroom, she said, when you picked up the key. Yes, ma'am. You said you'll want this back someday. I did. I've thought about that sentence for 11 days. She turned and looked at him directly. What did you mean? Marcus considered it. Nothing clever, he said. I meant that people who throw things generally end up wanting them back. That's all. I've watched it happen my whole life. He dropped the cup in the trash. I didn't mean the key, Ms. Sterling. I never meant the key. She looked at him a moment longer. Do you still have it? It's in the ignition of your car, Marcus said, where it belongs. Judge Amberg came back at 10:41 and ruled from the bench in 6 minutes. She found that the sale was executed by the corporation's chief executive officer with apparent and actual authority. She found that the disclaimer clause was drafted by the seller and would be construed against the seller. She found that the seller's own pleadings established that the vehicle's exclusion from inventory was the product of the seller's internal misconduct, not the buyer's. She found no likelihood of success on the merits and no irreparable harm that money could not address. She denied the temporary restraining order. Then she took her glasses off, which court reporters know means something is coming that they will type very carefully. I want to add something that isn't law and counsel can note their objection, and I'll overrule it. Nobody objected. I've been on this bench for 17 years, and I have heard a great many people explain why they should be released from a bargain, Judge Amberg said. The argument is almost always the same one. It's, I would never have agreed to this if I had known what I know now. And that's true. It's true every single time. It's true here. She looked at the defense table. But I didn't bother to look is not the same thing as I couldn't have known. Ms. Sterling, that vehicle sat on property you owned for 9 years. Nothing prevented you from walking out there. What prevented you was that you had already decided what it was. Victoria did not look away. And I'd note, the judge said, that you made the same decision about the man sitting at that table on the same afternoon in about the same amount of time. Motion denied. We're adjourned. Nadine Cabral put a hand flat on the table and let out a breath. Well, she said. Marcus didn't move. Marcus, give me a second. Take 2. He sat there in a courtroom on a Friday morning with 14 days behind him and 31 years behind that, and he thought about a tie rod end separating on an on-ramp at 6:15 in the morning, and he put both hands flat on the table and breathed until it passed. The sale was called for €200 that afternoon in the ballroom of a hotel 40 minutes north, and it had been set up in 9 days by an auction house that had cleared its calendar and flown people in from 3 countries. And the only reason it existed at all was that Walter Bishop had made 11 phone calls in one night, and every single person had answered. They had one lot. One. In a room built for 400. The catalog was a single sheet of paper, which people put in their jackets and later put behind glass. The car came in on a flatbed at 12:15, and Marcus drove it off the ramp himself 40 feet under its own power, and the sound of it in an enclosed loading dock made a man from Milan put his hand over his mouth. They set it on the floor with the letter beside it under glass, and the 4 photographs and 19 build sheets, and the drawing with Ali is right in the corner. Eleanor Ellis could not come. She'd had 11 hours' notice and a passport that had expired in 2019, so they put a laptop on a stand near the front row, and she watched from a kitchen in Yorkshire at 7 in the evening with a cup of tea she never drank. Victoria Sterling came. Nobody made her. Karen Pruitt advised against it in writing. She came anyway alone and sat 8 rows back on the aisle. At 1:52, Marcus walked over and crouched down beside the laptop. "Eleanor, I can see it. I can see the whole thing. Are you all right?" "No," she said and laughed. "No, I'm not remotely all right. Mr. Hayes, there are men in that room in suits looking at my grandfather's handwriting." "Yes, ma'am, there are." "He got 22 pounds a week," she said. Marcus didn't have anything for that. "Go on," Eleanor said. "Go and sit down, and Mr. Hayes, you'll tell them, won't you? Before it starts, you'll say his name." The auctioneer said it. He stood up at 2:00 and did not do the fast talk, not for this, and he read out the provenance in a flat, clear voice. Chassis number 1 of 5 Development Series 4, destroyed under order in June 1966, and the 5th removed from the works by the shop foreman Albert Hoyle, who signed the disposal certificate as a lie and kept the car in a shed for the remainder of his life. He said the name twice. Then he said, discovered 14 days ago in the rear lot of a dealership by Mr. Marcus Hayes, a mechanic who is with us today, and who returned it to running condition this morning at 10 minutes to 5. The room turned around and looked. Marcus was in the second row with his daughter in his good jacket, the one with the shadow on the left cuff, and he did not stand up, and he did not know what to do with his face. Ava did. Ava stood up on her chair and waved. The bidding opened at $3 million and was at 6 in under 90 seconds. Marcus stopped being able to follow it around then. There was a man on a phone at the back wall speaking Italian, and a woman with a paddle in the 4th row who never once changed expression, and a bank of 3 phone bidders working in a line, and the numbers just kept climbing over each other like water finding a level. 6-2, 6-5, 7. At 7 million, Walter Bishop reached over and took hold of Marcus's forearm and held on. "Steady. I'm steady." "You're not." 7-5, 8. 8-2 from the woman in the 4th row, and the Italian phone came back at 8-5, and Ava said out loud into a silence, "Dad!" And about 200 people laughed, and it broke something open in the room. 9 million. The woman in row 4 put her paddle down flat on her lap and did not pick it up again. 9-5. And then a man in the back row stood up. He was very old, and he was in a gray suit that had been good 20 years ago, and he did not have a paddle at all. He had been sitting there since 8:50 that morning in a courtroom, and Marcus, who had noticed him and then forgotten him, turned around now and felt the floor tilt. 10 million, the man said. Nobody moved. The auctioneer looked at him. "Sir, do you have a—" "I have a number with your house. I've had it since 1991. His voice carried without effort. $10 million. The Italian phone went quiet. The phone bank went quiet. The hammer came down at 2:19 in the afternoon, and the ballroom came apart, people standing on chairs, a man near the back shouting in a language Marcus didn't know, the auction staff hugging each other like they'd won something themselves, and through the whole of it, Marcus Hayes sat holding his daughter's hand and could not hear a single thing. He'd promised himself he wasn't going to cry in a room full of strangers. He got about 11 seconds. The old man in the gray suit made his way up the aisle slowly with a cane, refusing an arm from a woman in an auction house blazer, and he stopped in front of Marcus and put out his hand. "Mr. Hayes." "Sir?" "Hollis Vane." "Mr. Vane." Marcus stood up and took the hand, and it was thin and hard and cold. "That was, sir, I don't know what to say to you." "Then don't say anything and let me say something instead, because I've been sitting on it since 8:30 this morning and I'm 83, and I don't have the patience I had." Hollis Vane's chin came up. "You've got 4 photographs on that table." "Yes, sir." "Would you take me to them?" Marcus took him to them. They stood together in front of the glass, and Hollis Vane looked down at 11 men squinting in a doorway in a brick shop in Warwickshire in June of 1966, and he lifted his cane and put the tip of it on the glass very gently over the face of the young man on the far right, the tallest one, the one with his sleeves rolled past the elbow and his hands behind his back. "That's me," he said. Marcus heard himself make a sound. "I was 23, Hollis Vane said. I'd been there 14 months. I did the pedal box and I did the throttle linkage, and I was so frightened of Albert Hoyle I could barely say good morning to the man." He kept the cane on the glass. "On the Tuesday they cut up number 2 in front of us, and I went outside and was sick against a wall, and Albert came out and stood next to me and didn't say a word, and then he said, 'Go home, lad, come back tomorrow.' And that's all he ever said to me about it." Sir, I came to this country in 1971. I sold industrial fasteners. I did all right. Hollis Vane's voice had not changed once, and his eyes had not left the photograph. And for 50 years I have been telling people that Albert Hoyle saved that car, and every one of them has looked at me the way you look at an old man. Mr. Vane, there's a letter in the case beside you. I've read it. Twice this morning from the photographs your counsel filed. He finally lowered the cane. Mr. Hayes, I paid $10 million for a motor car this afternoon, and I want you to understand that I did not buy it for me. I have no children. It's going to a trust, and it will be in a public building in 18 months, and it will never be behind a rope, and the placard is going to have that man's name on it in letters you can read from the door. Marcus put both hands over his mouth for a second. Now, Hollis Vane said, I'd like to meet the young lady. Ava came over and shook his hand exactly the way her father had taught her and looked him in the eye. You're in the picture, she said. I am. That's weird. It's extremely weird, Hollis Vane agreed. Miss Hayes, I'm told you're the one who said it was beautiful. Ava glanced at her dad. Everybody else said it was garbage, she said. Yes. The old man nodded slowly. Everybody else has been saying that for 60 years. Marcus found Victoria Sterling in the corridor outside the ballroom at 20 of 3, standing near a service door with her back against the wall, not on her phone, not doing anything at all. She saw him coming and straightened up. Congratulations, she said. Thank you. That's a genuine congratulations. I know it is. He stopped a few feet off. I saw you sitting there, 8 rows back. That took something. It took less than you think. I'd already lost it in a courtroom this morning. Victoria's jaw worked. Mr. Hayes, I want to say something, and I've rehearsed it 4 times, and every version is worse than the last, so I'm going to do it badly. Go ahead. The judge was right, and I hated it, and she was right. She looked at him. I sold you that car to humiliate you. That's the whole thing. There isn't a business reason underneath it. There's nothing underneath it. And I've spent 11 days looking for one so I could sleep, and there isn't one. Marcus was quiet a moment. No, he said. There isn't. Victoria absorbed that. You're not going to make it easier. Ma'am, I'm 51 years old and I've had 100 people be sorry at me, and every one of them wanted me to hand them something back. He said it gently. I'm not doing that anymore. Not even today. Especially not today. That's fair. It's not fair. It's just true. Marcus put his hands in his jacket pockets. But I'll tell you what I will do. The key's still in that car. Mr. Vane's people are going to move it Monday. So it was your key, and you threw it, and I picked it up, and it went with the car for $10 million. Marcus looked at her. You want to hear the honest part? Yes. It was never worth anything until somebody bothered to bend down, he said. Then he went back into the ballroom where his daughter was standing on a chair again, showing a laptop screen to a room full of collectors, so a schoolteacher in Yorkshire could see her grandfather's handwriting under glass. The check did not come for 19 days, and in those 19 days, Marcus Hayes drove his daughter to school in Ray Delgado's truck because his own was still sitting on jack stands with a tie rod end and a coffee can on the bench. That was the first thing he did. Before the accountant, before the lawyer, before any of it. He bought a car. It was a 4-year-old sedan with 41,000 miles on it front and side airbags, all the recall work documented. And he put it on his own lift and spent 6 hours underneath it before he handed over $1. He checked the frame rails. He checked both tie rods. He pulled a wheel and looked at the inside of the tire the way he'd been telling people to do for 31 years. $19,000, Ray said, standing in the doorway. Brother, you've got $10 million coming. 8.1 after the house takes theirs, then the government takes theirs. Fine, 6 something, and you bought a Camry. It's a good car. Marcus. It's a good car, Ray. Marcus came out from under it and sat up. You know what I wanted that Tuesday walking in there? I wanted something safe for my kid. That's all I wanted. Not one thing that's happened since changed what I wanted. Ray was quiet a second. You're a strange man. I've been told. Ava named it Gerald. Nobody ever knew why. The check cleared on a Thursday, and Marcus sat down at the kitchen table with a legal pad and did what he had done his entire life when a number was too big to feel, which was to break it into pieces small enough to hold. The first piece went into an account with Ava's name on it and a lock on it until she was 25, and he did not tell her the number, and she did not ask, because she had figured out by then that some things her father would explain when it was time. The second piece paid off a house on Dunbar Street that had 11 years left on it. The third piece he sent to Yorkshire, and Eleanor Ellis called him at 6 in the morning, her time furious. "Absolutely not. Mrs. Ellis, Eleanor, and absolutely not. That's your car, and it was your work, and I didn't do one single thing. Your grandfather did all of it." "My grandfather has been dead for 34 years, Mr. Hayes." "Then let it go to his great-grandchildren," Marcus said. "You've got two. That's the whole argument. I'm not going to have a better one." There was a silence on the line that went on a long time. "You've thought about this." "I've thought about almost nothing else for 3 weeks." "You're a very difficult man to say no to." "That's new," Marcus said. "I'll enjoy it while it lasts." The fourth piece was the one that took 8 months. He found the building in October, a former transmission plant satellite, 41,000 square feet, 12 bays, roof shot wiring worse, and he bought it for less than people expected because he walked the whole thing with a flashlight before he made an offer, and the man selling it watched him do it and knocked $80,000 off the price without being asked. "Why'd you do that?" Marcus asked him. "Because you looked under the mezzanine," the man said. "Nobody looks under the mezzanine." He called it the Hoyle Works, not Hayes. He was firm about that, and he was firm about it in a way that ended discussions, and when the sign painter asked him to spell it, he spelled it twice. It opened the following June with 9 benches, 4 lifts, a machine shop, and a program that took 11 people a year, people who could already do the work and had never once been let near the work. 2 of them came out of prison. One of them was a 58-year-old woman who had been rebuilding carburetors in her kitchen since 1989 because no shop in 3 counties would put her on a bench. Trevor Ames ran the office. He'd applied like everybody else, and he'd put in his cover letter in the first line. I told him service was around the side, and Marcus read that sentence and hired him before he read the rest. "You don't have to keep punishing yourself," Marcus told him. "I'm not. I'm keeping the receipt." "Same thing some days." "Not the same thing at all," Trevor said. "One of them you carry, and one of them carries you." Marcus put his hand on the kid's shoulder and let it go. Gil Marchetti pled out in March. 19 counts consolidated to 4 restitution. He'd never finish paying 14 months. Marcus was not called and did not go and heard about it from Dale Whitmer, who called him personally, which surprised him. "I thought you'd want to know." "I don't particularly." "No. Mr. Whitmer, that man spent 7 years betting that nobody would look at the back of the lot." Marcus watched Ava through the kitchen window doing something violent to a soccer ball. "He was right for 7 years. That's punishment enough for me." Walter Bishop lived 19 more months. He spent 11 of them on a book which his daughter said was the only reason he made it that far, and which he refused to let anybody help him with, except for a mechanic in Ohio who took his calls at all hours and knew what a tensioner sounded like when it was about to let go. He sent Marcus the pages as he finished them by mail on paper because he did not believe in the other way. The chapter was called Page 211. It opened with the sentence, "In 1994, I wrote that Albert Hoyle was careless. This chapter exists because I was wrong, and because a man I had never met read a letter to me over the telephone at 20 minutes to 2 in the morning, and I have had 31 years to be a better historian than I was." Marcus read that standing at his own mailbox and had to sit down on the curb. He flew to Pennsylvania twice. The second time, Bishop was in a bed and mostly not there, and his daughter said he'd been asking for the car, and Marcus sat down and put his phone on the blanket and played the 90-second video, and the old man's hand came up off the sheet at the 4th crank of the starter. He died in February. He'd left instructions that there be no eulogy delivered by anyone who had never had grease under their fingernails, which his daughter said was aimed at 3 specific people, and which is how Marcus Hayes ended up standing in front of 200 historians and collectors in a chapel in Pennsylvania in a good jacket with a shadow on the left cuff. He spoke for 4 minutes. He said that Walter Bishop had spent 30 years telling the truth as he understood it, and then spent his last 2 years correcting it in public at 91 with his name on it, when nobody on earth would have blamed him for letting it stand. "That's the harder job," Marcus said. "Anybody can be right. Going back is the hard part." The museum opened 18 months to the week after the hammer came down exactly as Hollis Vane had said it would, and it was not behind a rope. You could walk right up to it. You could put your hand flat on the fender if you wanted, and there was a small sign that said so, which caused an argument among conservators that Hollis Vane ended in one sentence. "It sat in a shed for 40 years. It'll survive a schoolchild." The placard by the front wheel was 31 inches wide, and you could read it from the door. It gave the chassis number and the series and the date, and then it said, "Removed from the works and preserved by Albert Hoyle shop foreman, who signed a false certificate of destruction on 14th June 1966 and told no one for the rest of his life." Eleanor Ellis stood in front of it for a long time on opening day in a coat she'd bought for the occasion, holding the hand of a granddaughter who was 8. "Read it out to me," she said. The little girl read it out, stumbling on certificate. "That's my granddad," Eleanor said. "That's your great-great-granddad." He lied, Eleanor agreed, "to the right people about the right thing, and he never got a penny for it, and he never got a thank you. And now there's your name in a museum, love, and there's the reason." Marcus was standing about 15 feet back with Ava, who was 11 by then, and had opinions about everything. "Dad." "Yeah." "Is that why you wouldn't take the 400,000? Marcus looked at her. "When did you hear about the 400,000? "I hear about everything," Ava said. "I'm 9. I was 9. "Well," he said, "yes, that's why." "But you didn't know about the letter yet?" "No." "So you didn't know there'd be a museum?" "No, baby, I didn't know anything." Marcus put his hand on top of her head, which she permitted about half the time now. "I just knew that if I took the check, the story stopped in my driveway, and a man went to a lot of trouble in 1966 to make sure it didn't stop in his shed." Victoria Sterling came to the Hoyle Works 14 months after the auction on a Tuesday afternoon, and she came alone, and she did not call ahead. Marcus was in Bay 4, with his head under the hood of a 1972 Bronco that belonged to a widow in Dayton and was worth less than the labor on it. Somebody said his name twice before he came out. She had aged. That was the first thing he noticed, and he didn't say it. She'd sold 4 locations to settle the insurance mess and the carrier fight, and she wasn't on any magazine covers anymore, and she was wearing a coat that was good but wasn't loud. "Mr. Hayes?" "Ms. Sterling." "I've been trying to do this for 11 months and I keep getting to the parking lot. You made it inside this time." "I did." He wiped his hands and put the rag on the fender and waited, because he had learned a long time ago that when somebody has driven a long way to say something, you let them say it. Victoria looked around the shop instead. The benches, the lifts, a young man with a face tattoo doing valve lash on a straight 6 with the concentration of a surgeon. The 58-year-old woman from the kitchen in 3 counties running the machine shop, now arguing with somebody about a crank grind. "How many people work here?" 26. 11 in the program. "And what happens to the 11? They finish and I call every restoration shop and dealer group in 6 states and I tell them what I've got." Marcus leaned on the fender. 9 of the first 11 placed. The other 2 stayed. "You call the dealer groups." "Everyone." "Do you call mine?" "I called yours twice," Marcus said. "Your service director hired a man named Curtis in April. He's very good. He'll be running a shop in 5 years. Victoria stood there and absorbed that, and something in her face came apart very slightly at the corner and got put back. "I didn't know that." "You wouldn't. It's 4 levels down from you." "That's the whole problem, isn't it?" she said. "Everything true is 4 levels down from me." Marcus didn't answer, because there wasn't a kind answer, and he wasn't going to give her an unkind one. Victoria took a breath. "I saw your clothes before I saw your ability," she said. "Yes, ma'am." "That's the sentence. That's the whole sentence, and I've had 2 years, and that's all I've got." "It's enough of a sentence." "Is it?" "Ms. Sterling, it's the truest thing you've ever said to me, and it took you 2 years, and most people never get there at all." Marcus pushed off the fender. "You want to know what I actually think? I don't think you're a cruel woman. I think you built a system where nobody could ever tell you no, and then you were surprised when it turned out you'd been wrong about something for 9 years in your own back lot. And a man in a canvas jacket found it in 4 minutes. 3 probably. I was slow that day. My knee." Victoria laughed, actually laughed out loud, and put a hand over her eyes. "God," she said. 14 years of people telling me I'm brilliant, and 1 mechanic and a 9-year-old. She's 11 now. Of course she is." They walked the floor. He showed her the machine shop and the parts library and the wall where the 11 names went up each September. She asked good questions which surprised him, and she asked them at the bench to the people doing the work, and not to him over their heads. At the door she stopped. "I have to ask you one thing, and then I'll go." "Ask it." "That first day, the key." She was looking at the floor. Why did you pick it up? You could have walked out. You should have walked out. Any sane person walks out. Marcus thought about it for a while because she deserved a real answer. Because my daughter was watching, he said. So you wanted her to see you take it. No, ma'am. I wanted her to see me not become it. He looked at her steadily. If I'd walked out mad, that's what she'd remember. Her daddy got humiliated and left. I picked it up so she'd remember the other thing. Which is what? That a man can bend down and still be standing up straight. Victoria Sterling stood in the doorway of a 41,000-square-foot shop named after a dead English foreman and did not say anything at all, and then she put out her hand and Marcus shook it. Years later, when Ava Hayes was 22 and stood up to speak at the dedication of a second building, this one in Detroit, 40 benches, her father's name nowhere on it either. She told the story the way she remembered it, which was not the way the internet remembered it. She didn't start with the $10 million. She never did. She started with a hand on a dusty hood in the back corner of a lot, and a 9-year-old saying, "Dad, I think it's beautiful," and a man who had been laughed at 40 seconds earlier turning around and taking his daughter seriously instead of taking the insult personally. "Everybody thinks this story is about a car being worth $10 million, she said. "It isn't. The car was worth $10 million the whole time it sat under that tree. Nobody's opinion moved it a single dollar in either direction. Not the 2 shops that wrote it off, not the man who hid it, not the woman who laughed at it, not even my father." She looked out at 400 people. "All my dad did was walk to the back of the lot and look," she said. "That's it. That's the whole thing. Everybody else in that story had the same chance and didn't take it for 9 years." And then she said the part that ended up on a wall in letters you can read from the door. "Value doesn't wait for permission. It sits there exactly as it is for as long as it takes, and the only question that has ever mattered is whether you were the kind of person who bothered to look."